Greetings, fellow blue barracudas. Tiki here.
And BlueDragonFive.
And welcome to a very special, very orange edition of the Kickback Cafe, the show where we kick back, relax, and talk about anything but Disney. All right, BlueDragonFive, we've got a monumentous event here. We've got the 25th anniversary of the launch date of Nickelodeon, basically the grounding point for Nickelodeon, basically the place in Nickelodeon's history where they really first got their original content with the launch of Rugrats, Doug, and the Ren and Stimpy Show. So, BlueDragonFive, do you want to elaborate further?
Sure. So, folks, today marks a monumentous occasion. Nickelodeon started Nicktoons on a very specific day. That is today, August 11th, 1991. Basically, what gave birth to Nicktoons were two people, essentially. I mean, there was, of course, a lot of people in between. There's Nickelodeon in general, but it was really championed by two people, Jerry Laybourne and Vanessa Coffey. Vanessa Coffey is a familiar name. She was really, let's just say, the champion of Ren and Stimpy, but basically, again, she was like the producer for all the animated shows at Nickelodeon. Mm-hmm. And I'm taking you back here, folks, so before we got these three shows. This is the origin of these three shows. So, Vanessa Coffey, previously she worked at Marvel during the licensing years, I like to call it. The licensing years were basically these shows that were pretty much Marvel had these properties that they don't have any longer, but they had these properties that really they were doing purely for the toys. You know, like they had the Transformers the Transformers.
Oh, yeah, sure. Indiana Jones, Star Wars, stuff like that.
More so like Transformers, G.I. Joe, and My Little Pony. All very successful properties in one way or another that Marvel no longer has. Point, she was like in the adapting those in animation sort of thing. So basically, when those are adapting animations, it felt really, obviously to sell toys. So she was getting a little fed up with that. So she kind of shifted mediums here. And basically, she joins Nickelodeon, and Jerry Laybourne and her are very like-minded in that they want creator-driven shows. And Vanessa Coffey, she's my main example. Don't worry, I'm gonna throw in some Jerry Laybourne here and there, but mainly Vanessa Coffey because she had a hand more in every show. Jerry Laybourne was like one of the co-founders of Nickelodeon. That's really different. Had to differentiate them. Point is, Coffey was the driving force behind the original programming because before this, the live-action Nickelodeon shows were the primary programming. It was the live-action kind of game shows and like all sorts. Well,
I think they had like a sketch comedy show, right?
Yeah,
you couldn't do that on television, I think it was.
Yeah, that's I forget. Not the game show; those came later. But I mean, the point is like the live action shows that were not Amanda Show, but like before that, kind of the precursors to that.
Well, Amanda Show was basically a spin-off of all that, but we'll get into that.
My point is, like Pete and Pete, and that right. That was along the lines of in that.
Salute your shorts, hey dude.
Yes, hey dude. Exactly. Those are the kind of shows they had on. Those were kind of the primary thing Nickelodeon was putting out. So Vanessa Coffey is kind of the driving force behind. Let's get some original programming. Basically, instead of doing toy-based licenses on Nickelodeon, let's just do some original shows for Nickelodeon, animated shows. And she was determined to seek out animators with ideas, which Jerry Laybourne was all for, because I believe I want to say she was married to an animator at the time, which also maybe gave her some perspective on that. I could be wrong with that. Don't quote me. The point is, the goal was also to have like three shows, very diverse shows in a lineup of like you could have three shows, which eventually gave us Doug, Rugrats, and Ren and Stimpy, all premiering on August 11th, 1991. So let's go on down the list here real quick, kind of what the genesis was for these three shows. We got Jim Jenkins, the showrunner for Doug and the creator of Doug. Basically, Doug stemmed from the single-panel cartoons that are pretty much Jim Jenkins.
Right.
Doug is based on Jim Jenkins in real life. Like he had a comic called Doug Gets a New Pair of Shoes. Pretty much a lot of mundane things with his Doug character.
And Jim Jenkins had a real hatred of Mr. Doug Walker, and he just set out to create this cartoon to just ruin Doug Walker's life, and that was the genesis of Doug. I'm sorry. I'm kidding.
No.
I keyed.
But Doug was an exaggerated version of Jenkins as a youth, pretty much. And Coffey, basically, was hilarious. And this is the really electric thing about Vanessa Coffey and why she was just like the perfect person to put in charge of Nickelodeon. She was the Gene McCurdy for Nickelodeon. Gene McCurdy being the one that kind of okayed Tiny Toons and Batman the Animated Series. On the other side. Coffey was just instantly starstruck, discovering the fact that looking at the comic and looking up at him, oh my God, you're him, you're Doug. And just instantly, see, Vanessa Coffey's thing through all these shows, she goes with her gut. So if she feels something, she she's all in, and that's what gave us these great shows where she looks at him. Okay, take it to pilot. Let's see what you got with this thing. She's instantly okay. I'm sold. Just you're this character. This is awesome. Mm-hmm. Then we have the Rugrats creative team, which I want to say it all starts with Garber Cuspo, and basically Garber Cuspo. This is based on a few interviews I heard from them.
Gillespie Cuspo is definitely going to be a name that's coming up like a reoccurring trend on this list for sure.
So basically, this is the first real kind of original show they got before the rest of them that will be showing up on our list most likely. Anyway, so Garber Cuspo, a lot of early Simpsons work really acclaimed for that. Kind of the Tracy Ullman days of Simpsons, if I'm remembering correctly. There was a point on the Simpsons show where he stood up for a producer, and that kind of led to not him being fired, but him kind of leaving after being upset about him having to be put in a position where he would have to fire an innocent producer. So kind of disillusioned with that. Luckily, Nickelodeon's calling and said, "Oh, we love what you do on the Simpsons. You guys got a pitch for us? Please come in." Because again, Vanessa Coffey very desperate. She's begging, "Hey guys, listen, we really need some. We want to get some original programming out there. We need creative-driven shows. Anyone got any ideas?" Essentially, there's a really electric atmosphere in that regard. And specifically, what was asked of them is that we need an inventive children's series. And children's series, you can tell where that kind of led, where Arlene Claspy, she literally looked to her kids and remembered that her husband, they had done a film about kind of their own kids and a father, and that kind of gave them the idea, wait a minute, just looks to their own like toddler children and says, hey, a show about babies. Then we get Paul Germain, and Paul Germain is kind of the pitch man of the group. He basically came up with the premise that the babies, they play dumb with the adults. When the adults leave, the real story starts when they leave the room.
Right.
And basically, every other pitch he had when he went into Nickelodeon, it kept getting shot down. The last one he had was a one-sentence pitch of what I just told you. It was like, well, what happens when the adults leave the room with the babies? And I got the okay. It was the last one-sentence pitch. I had the rest of these well-thought-out ones. Then we have the most interesting one of the group. We have John Kricfalusi.
Oh, God.
I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version of this, because John Kricfalusi, again, people have made documentaries on this guy. What a fascinating character he is. Point is, John Kricfalusi, just in his Nickelodeon days here, he had a lot of ideas, George Liquor included. He brings in a series of pitches, and let's just say the main three were He Hog, the Atomic Pig, Jimmy's Clubhouse, and Your Gang. Your Gang being a parody of Our Gang, with live-action children with animated kind of characters walking around. So John's super energetic pitches, which again are very legendary around the halls of Nickelodeon. He's legendary, super enthusiastic with the pitches, and you always want to be a good pitch man. He pitched this to Vanessa Coffey, and she loved this, and she loved it so much. Well, listen, I'm gonna have to bring you out to the other executives because I can't do any of these pitches justice. I gotta bring you out there to pitch them because he's so energetic with the pitches. He doesn't. They're all baffled and scared when he's pitching in the room because Vanessa Coffey gets at the rest of them initially. Oh my God, someone call the police. Then thankfully, again, I told you I'd bring her back. Jerry Laybourne walks in. She says she hears all this screaming and everything. What's going on here? He says, oh, yeah, this is John. He's pitching some ideas to us. And she sits down. She hears one. And this is a famous story. John Kricfalusi is really getting into it. And he has an asthma inhaler. It kind of flies out of his back pocket right into her cleavage. He just plucks it out and continues with the pitch. And at the end of it, again, she just got so into it. It's like everything's sweating profusely because there's bad air conditioning in the room. He's like, things are falling out of his pockets. He's getting that bumping up and down into it. And basically, by the end, they're all like dumbfounded. And then Jerry Laybourne, she gets up, leaves the room. Before she does, she says, buy something from this man.
Nice.
And in terms of the idea, Vanessa Coffey, because again, Vanessa Coffey has a really very interesting relationship with John Kricfalusi, even kind of when things were looking really dour. Because she always stood up for Ren and Stimpy. She liked the Your Gang pitch, but the main thing she liked from it were kind of the incidental animated dog and cat characters, which turned into Ren and Stimpy.
Nice. Okay, that's interesting.
She was he was barely. Oh yeah, there's these two dog and cat characters. Oh no, please tell me more about these guys. And John Kricfalusi held on to Jimmy the Idiot Boy for a rainy day, and boy was it a rainy day.
Oh God.
Okay, so anyway, so the show's pilots. Doug tested best out of the pilots, in like with the test audiences and everything. Nick Rugrats out of all of them. And Vanessa Coffey, they were all having doubts about Ren and Stimpy because it was the edgiest out of all of them. But Vanessa Coffey, she stood by her gut pitch, which essentially got two 13-episode first seasons, and Ren and Stimpy got a 6-episode kind of experimental season, which again worked out for him in the long run. Vanessa Koff just had this brilliant idea where she just wanted like the block to work like a meal. You know, you have kind of your healthy kind of appetizer with Doug. You have your and it's so bizarre. Like they were okayed in this order, and they also were broadcast in this order too. It's pretty funny. You know, Doug's kind of the healthy appetizer. You know, Rugrats is the meal, and then Ren and Stimpy's just the unadulterated sugar.
Right. Yeah. Oh my God. And that was pretty much what it was like sitting down at the TV at 7 o'clock. That's a good description of it.
And they all premiered on Sunday, which wigged out the other, like Disney and everyone, because they were thinking, oh my God, who premieres stuff on Sunday? It's like Saturday mornings, not Sunday.
Right.
And point is, they were all big hits. They're all big hits, and 25 years later, not only are we still talking about them, but the other shows, that we're talking about the other shows as well, that these shows paved the way for on Nickelodeon.
And just to prove that point, I have a show from 2016 that is in my top 10. So, you know, just goes to show that, you know, we have, there's been some dark patches in Nickelodeon's history, but I still think every once in a while we'll get a gem from the studio. So, all right, Dragon. So I think what we should do is I should go first with my honorable mentions, then you should go with honorable mentions, then you should also start in with your number 10. Okay, so my honorable mentions, folks, just to get them out really quick, gonna give a shout out to Invader Zim, because if we didn't talk about this show, people would be pissed off. Folks, it's not that I'm not, like, I am a fan of Invader Zim. I think the art style is very unique, of course. It's very much a show that was run from top to bottom by its creator. It was very much a creator-driven show, much like you were talking about, Dragon with John Chris Belushi and everything like that, and the Q-Spos with Rugrats. Very much kind of, you know, the one guy to... I'm sorry, I'm kind of blanking on his name right now, which is bad, but... Anyways,
yeah.
What?
Sorry, I don't know his name either.
Oh, well, that's a great start. That's a great start. Invader Zim.
Here's the reason, folks. Invader Zim is... I'm sorry, T, go on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
See, the point, folks, is that Invader Zim, it's a dividing show, you know? If it's not your taste, it's not going to be your taste, you know? It's like just Invader Zim, it goes really dark. It skews really dark, and you got to be open-minded for some black humor in an animated show. And for me, it went too dark. I didn't root for humanity. That's why I am an example of someone. I couldn't get into Invader Zim, but I do respect kind of the stay power of it, though.
And that's kind of the thing with me is I actually thought it got a little bit too oversaturated with the Hot Topic crowd, and that's why I stopped falling out. I kind of started falling out of it. I remember when it was airing, I was really into it, but as an adult, it just doesn't hold up for me as much, to tell you the truth. Like, I've tried to go back and rewatch it. I don't know. There's something to me. It's just like you said, Dragon, I agree. It's very nihilist, and like, to me, the show, like you said, it's definitely got an original flavor to it. It's not one of my favorites. Having said that, we both kind of have a respect for it. So
yeah, like, I can't get into the world, and if you can't get into the world, you kind of find. I think with the rest of these shows, we're gonna find you can get into the world and supporting characters a little more. Invader Zim, it's pretty much two supporting characters in a very dark place.
Okay.
But you're right, though. Respect the heck out of it. For people to go nuts for the show, which is why you're bringing it up.
Okay, so my next honorable mention is iCarly. Oh, God. So iCarly, Dragon, I think, is by far the best show of this era of Nickelodeon, which is why I kind of included it in the honorable mentions. This was a dark time for Nickelodeon. This was a dark, dark time filled with practically nothing but these teenage sitcoms. And iCarly was, like I said, by far the best out of all of them. I appreciate iCarly's YouTube humor. I appreciate kind of the riff of YouTube culture that show represented. I think all the characters, for the most part, were really fun, really well acted, had a lot of good comedy, a lot of likable moments. Maybe went a little too overboard with all the big kind of like iCarly movie events that they tried to push out towards.
Yeah, there were so many events they did.
They got a little desperate towards the end. I'll admit that. But I don't know. To me, iCarly was definitely like, it's something that when I turned it on, when I actually like sat down and watched it, I was surprised how much I liked it. And it's like, you know, I don't even have a grudging respect for it. I like it. I genuinely think it's a really well-produced show in an era where a lot of what Nickelodeon was producing was pretty much trash. So,
yeah, you know, Out of all the shows, I prefer Drake and Josh over iCarly, but I do like elements of iCarly. Like I like her brother. I like Jerry. I believe it's Jerry Turner's the name of the actor. He has a
I think he's definitely kind of the one who steals the show.
Yeah, he's kind of a Jim Carrey-esque figure.
Right.
Anyway.
Okay. And my final honorable mention is Harvey Beaks. This is done by J.C. Quinzel, the same guy who did Chowder. It has a very, very, very distinct art style. It's got an incredibly laid-back feel to it. It's got a really nice tone to it. I had to pick between this show and one other show from the current Nickelodeon era to include in my actual top 10 list. And I got to admit, it was a really tough choice. Harvey Beaks is a beautiful show. It can be a beautiful show just because of how much Harvey Beaks takes its time. Like, Dragon, some of the episodes of Harvey Beaks are as simple as, like, oh, it's a summer day. What are we going to do? You know, like, how are we going to spend our time? And it's very much slice of life. It's very much kind of, like, brings you back to childhood. There's no, like, kind of modern technology or pop culture references or anything like that, which is really refreshing. Again, I love the art style. I love the music. It's a very, very laid back and just really easy to watch show. And I'm a really big fan of it. I wish I could have included both this and the other show that's going to be on my top 10 on the list, but I just had to choose one or the other. So Harvey Beaks definitely gets a very, very well-deserved honorable mention.
Okay, so my honorable mentions, just with my list in general, including the honorable mentions, just a lot of it was really it was almost impossible to rank this list, by the way, folks, especially when we get to the top 5 category. I was like beside myself, what do I put? I don't hurt anyone's feelings. Oh my God, what do I do? I love these guys, all that stuff. But
would you wager to say this was the hardest list to rank?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying it was hard just to kind of rank instinctually. I kind of found a strategic process for it as well.
Okay.
So, basically, my ranking kind of goes as the shows I'd be most likely to rewatch given the opportunity. That's really like most kind of, because we have, I should mention this now because it's 25th anniversary of Nickelodeon. We have the Splat now, which is a lovely way of kind of bringing back the old shows, and of course on the Splat we are getting our shows brought back to us.
Yep, we have a lot of stuff on the horizon to look forward to. That's for sure.
So the point is, the Splat is a godsend, which now kind of allows us to kind of reminisce on these shows, and also maybe be in the position where we can just be flipping channels and, hey, look, a blast from the past. Let's watch it.
And so folks, I'm sure we'll be covering each and every bit of content that comes out of Nickelodeon, like the Jungle movie, the Legends of the Hidden Temple movie. We're going to cover it all as it comes out.
Certainly. So with that in mind, that's kind of like, that was kind of my mindset. Like, well, what would I be most likely if I'm flipping through to watch? It's given the opportunities and just remembering these shows. And what would I watch more? Anyway, so honorable mention number 3, My Life as a Teenage Robot. Now, My Life as a Teenage Robot, just kind of go by it quick. This show, it was a fun premise. Basically, a doctor builds kind of a teenage crime-fighting superhero of a daughter. And it's a really fun 50s style design. I love aesthetically how it looks. It's kind of this 50s-esque town, kind of almost like an Archie-like town.
It's kind of got a Jetsons quality to it in a way.
Yeah, and it's like, I just kind of like I love the gadgets, as you can imagine. The gadgets, the premise is fun, and I had a really solid finale movie, like kind of the last. They like a movie, and basically Nickelodeon at times they will end their series on kind of like a TV movie of some kind, and
like Hey Arnold was supposed to do. We're getting that now. Yeah, now.
And usually when they're allowed the opportunity, they do a pretty good job with it. Usually.
Sure.
And this is one of those cases where really kind of you invested in what was happening. It was kind of a great kind of set-off for the show. And the only reason that it's kind of lowest on the totem pole here is because I just kind of know it too well. I mean, I saw so many reruns of it, I just kind of know it like the back of my hand. And again, it's a good show, and I'm not saying I never rewatch it. I'm just saying I kind of get it. Maybe I kind of absorbed all I can from that show.
Okay, I understand.
I'll mention number 2 is Angry Beavers. Angry Beavers.
Okay. I'm surprised that was an honorable mention. All right.
I know. I really like Angry Beavers. It's very nostalgic for me, but it's getting really kind of critical and bare bones with it. It's kind of it gets a little repetitive, like any show. Understandably,
it does.
It's like this. It's worth re-exploring, definitely, which is why it's a little higher in My Life as a Teenager. But it's worth re-exploring, and this is one that, watching on TV, there are reruns of, and I kind of come across them. I kind of notice when I come across them. And most of my enjoyment of the show is out of like old favorites, and like ones that really do it for me. There's still a lot of them that just either kind of like feel like or just like I don't know if I want to watch this all the way through. It's like I kind of get where it's going. The point is,
to me, by far the most memorable episode of Angry Beavers was the staring contest.
Like
I'm sorry, was it the staring I think there was a staring contest, and then I think another episode was the one where they challenged each other to see who could stay awake the longest, or was that in the same episode?
Well, I mean, I remember the stay awake the longest. I can't recall if that was a bit within it. My point is, Angry Beavers, Muscular Beaver, and those are funny episodes. I want to kind of get to the old favorites. Like one of my favorites is the one where they are adopted like pets inside the psychotic family.
yeah.
So I'm saying I gotta hit a sweet spot in Angry Beavers. That's why it's kind of in the middle there. Number one though, number one is kind of a tricky one. I had to put it on out of a sense of duty, but I loved it when it was really on.
I have the feeling what it is.
Fairly Odd Parents.
Yep. all right.
Like, really, this one kept rattling around my brain of where to put this, because I have to. Part of me has to mention, because there's a lot of Butch Hartman charm and creativity in the initial setup.
Right.
I should say, when I say Fairly Odd Parents, I mean I'm sure there's maybe a few after this, but I mean primarily up to the second movie, Channel Chasers. That's where the show really kind of. It pretty much should have ended after the second TV movie. So, and the show is what I can positively say about it real quick. Is it has a lot of Butch Hartman charm and creativity. Again, it's like Butch Hartman and Seth MacFarlane really got there when they worked together on stuff like Johnny Bravo. It's like really great stuff, and you get a lot of that kind of cool creativity. Fairly Odd Parents I love the premise when it first premiered, and of course the Oh Yeah cartoon days is probably the sweetest spot of Fairly Odd Parents. That kind of over time they kind of then it's not that they went in the formula. It's that it felt like a different show. It was like super clever in the beginning days, and then it kind of got into like a fun, really kind of crazy spot of like so you have like all these shenanigans you get into if you wish yourself out, but the kid just is really unspecific about his wishes, which is why all the disaster follows him.
Right.
But again, with that though, I mean, it was entertaining when it was entertaining. Again, up the Channel Chasers, the movie is when they kind of ran out of ideas afterwards, because we're at a point now where it's just now has gone fully downhill. Where
how many live action movies have they done at this point?
It's a god. That's another thing. Again, this is way before the live action things. We had, I want to say 3. I want to say it was 3.
Oh dear.
There's a Christmas one. There's the first one.
Fucking seasonal shenanigans. Oh boy. No, I'm just kidding. Never.
I know there's 2. There might be a third one after the Christmas one. I'm not sure. Point is, basically, like they ran out of ideas after the Channel Chasers movie, which had a really profound ending of like, okay, he grows up and Timmy grows up, he has kids of his own, and the Fairly Odd Parents may not be his Fairly Odd Parents anymore. He doesn't remember them, but thankfully his children have those same Fairly Odd Parents, which is a nice ending. I think they should have stuck with that. It's kind of a nice kind of sweet spot to hit, but it went downhill. They ran out of ideas, and that just before getting to live action catastrophe, you have like they throw a baby into the mix. Hey, let's throw Poof in there, and then okay, well we've had a fairy baby. How do we up the stakes? How do we up the ante? Well, a talking dog. That's a fairy. So you can see where they're just kind of completely. They're going out of their minds currently. But again, I'm going to suggest last thing. I'm sorry, I don't mean to linger on Fairly Odd Parents. One last thing, because I think it's like for any show, it's kind of going downhill. Like with Family Guy with Seth MacFarlane, I think Butch Hartman is just kind of he's not in the game. He's not. He's not as involved as he probably used to be. He's just not as like. I don't want to say he's there, but he's not in the same headspace he was towards the beginning. He's not in the same creative headspace.
Right.
Okay, so that's the end of my honorable mention. So I guess I'm starting off the list then.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, number 10. Boy, folks, again, I tell you, ranking these was a doozy, but I think I got.
I agree, man. Even my top 10, even before the top 5, it was tough.
It would have been harder if I didn't have to make certain compromises with you.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
I'm saying if I didn't have to take certain things off to put them on there, it would have been really hard because some of those are just undeniably fantastic.
Exactly.
So, number 10, Jimmy Neutron.
Oh, okay. Cool. I'm glad you have that on there.
Yeah, so Jimmy Neutron's there because I had a lot of the picks on here are very nostalgic and very connected to me personally. It's Jimmy Neutron I loved as a younger version of myself. It's a lot of fondness when I was younger. I love the inventions, as you can imagine. I loved all the inventions. I kind of like the CG look. Looking back on it, doesn't quite hold up as well, but I just like the notion that, hey, we saw a movie of this and they're actually doing a series with this. I love kind of the small town suburban stories with the sci-fi angle. Just that premise did it for me. It's like a boy growing up, but instead of he's growing up with a super intelligence. It was a way of getting kind of a Nickelodeon version of Dexter's Lab in a way, and I kind of
it's not just a boy and his dog; it's a boy and his robot dog.
Yeah, just kind of like the sci-fi twist on kind of the classic kind of boy growing up story.
Right.
It wasn't perfect. It doesn't hold up as well. Rewatching it, of course,
it's probably the worst animated show ever, at least Nickelodeon.
It's a little my setup there, but yeah.
Sorry.
Point is, yes, it led to the Antichrist that is Planet Sheen. but at the time it was fun, and at times clever. I mean, you're gonna have some interesting stuff in it. And again, I once was Jimmy Neutron for Halloween. I'll admit it.
That's adorable.
And last really fun Jimmy Neutron memory before I have to backpedal for 1 second is with Jimmy Neutron. It attaches to one of my favorite kind of memories growing up in Universal. I love it used to be the Jetsons, Hanna-Barbera ride, but then I love that ride in general. I haven't gone the Despicable Me version of it.
Yeah,
it's a ride
Despicable Me, yeah.
I just love that it's a ride that stands the test of time. You can feel all the magic you did in the first time, but then it's kind of painted with another really awesome thing. And then I love that we had a Hanna-Barbera version, which is cool, and then we have a Nickelodeon version, which is also cool. Now there's a Despicable Me version, which I haven't gone on, but I'm going to do soon. I'm going to hope is cool.
If you like that sort of thing, I'm kind of over the Minions.
I like the Minions, so maybe I would enjoy it. My point is, I get a lot of personal attachment to Jimmy Neutron. That's why it's kind of numbered. It's on the low totem pole, but lovingly in the low totem pole. And then backtrack for 1 second. I just want to mention with Fairly Odd Parents, I love the Crimson Chin and Adam West on that show. I adore Adam West on Fairly Odd Parents. It's the best part about that show. Moving on.
Also, just one thing about Jimmy Neutron. The fondest memory I have of Jimmy Neutron is actually the movie, and then the anticipation for the show. Like, I remember when the show hit, I liked it, but I didn't like it as much as I was expecting it to, just because it was being built up so much. Of course, I think the thing that stands the test of time the most is still Rob Paulsen as Carl. Rob Paulsen is amazing in pretty much everything he does, but Carl Weezer was a treasure on that show. So
whenever Rob Paulsen on his podcast, the early days he did impressions for people, like you just want shout outs and character names. When it did Carl Weezer, it was hysterical. Reading people's shout outs.
I can't do it. Okay. So, Okay, so my number 10, folks, this is a very similar situation to Dragon and Fairly Odd Parents. My number 10 is SpongeBob, specifically seasons 1 through 3. Dragon, this is so tough, man. This is so tough because seasons 1 through 3.
Well, wait, don't you mean just after the movie then? That means up to the movie.
Yeah, seasons 1 through 3, and then up to the movie, I guess, whatever that was.
I'm saying it's basically ended at the movie. That's what I kind of my philosophy. I'm sorry, I don't mean to put words in your mouth. Go on.
Okay. Well, no, I agree. The movie is pretty much where it should have ended, but Dragon, it's so tough because the early episodes of SpongeBob are some of the best, generally sharpest, most comedic stuff to come out of the 90s for sure. I mean, you have stuff like Squid's Day Off. I don't know, stuff like squirrel jokes, just kind of going off the top of my head. I mean, these
Just
episodes,
One Bite. Oh God, I love Just One Bite.
I mean, these episodes are they're amazing. They're hysterical, and you can still go back and rewatch them and be just as entertained. The problem with SpongeBob is the legacy of SpongeBob, and that's why I'm just hard-pressed to put it anywhere higher than number 10, Dragon. That was my conundrum, because I was like, I like a lot of these episodes a lot, but I feel like a lot of these shows, for a lot of their charm, is that they lasted when they did, that they had the staying power when they did. And SpongeBob was something that kind of it hit it big in the late 90s, early 2000s era. And it's holy shit, it's still going almost 20 years later. It's kind of insane. So I don't know, Dragon. What do you think of me putting it number 10? Do you think it's a good place for that?
Tiki, I think it's a perfectly fair place to put that, because remember, I mean, I believe SpongeBob is the longest-running Nickelodeon show, if I remember.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, Fairly Odd Parents is second longest running, but SpongeBob's got it beat by a couple of years.
The point is, with SpongeBob, though, I mean, I am absolutely with you, Tiki. I have very fond memories. Again, everything up to, basically it should have ended at the movie, folks. Again,
I love the movie. I love the original movie.
I mean, it's the biggest slap in the face is they have two Krusty Krabs in the SpongeBob movie, yet going episodes after that, they completely forget about the second, very impractical, hilarious Krusty Krab. I love the ridiculous idea. Mr. Krabs wants to franchise the Krusty Krab. But what does he do? He franchises it a few feet away from the other one.
You have to franchise.
And that the whole goal of the movie is SpongeBob to become the manager, where how can he be? He has to be the fry cook in two places.
Oh, God. Yeah.
But regardless, with that, I want to mention that with SpongeBob in general, like I'm with you, taking the original stuff is like all the best ideas. Where even like Band Geeks was another good episode.
Band Geeks was great. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to share a lot of obscure memories of the course of this because again, we're going to deep cuts 90s territory. I had remember when they were really trying to sell the little player, not a DVD player, but a little screen, and you could put these tiny little disc in the thing and watch episodes.
No, I don't remember that, but I do remember having 2 episodes of SpongeBob on a Game Boy Advance player. I do remember that.
It was it wasn't a Game Boy Advance. It was something almost akin to a Game Boy Advance. And basically, like you had Jackie Chan Adventures, which I had, and you also had and the SpongeBob episodes, and the main SpongeBob one was Band Geeks. And I just remember watching on that tiny little screen just being encapsulated.
Oh my god, that's great.
It's great. I can watch the really awesome SpongeBob episode wherever I go. It's blew my mind. And with SpongeBob, the last thing I'll say about On Premise is that Steven Hillenburg, again, when Steven Hillenburg's involvement, I want to say ended after the movie. Before he came back for the second movie.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate, yeah.
Word is he might have come back now for the current SpongeBob episodes. I don't know if that's true, so I can't really don't quote me on that. But again, with SpongeBob, I always loved the Krusty Krab episodes. I kind of wish like the show was a Krusty Krab show almost.
I could see.
I mean, those were my favorite
spin-off.
That's the thing. Just all the Krusty Krab segments were my favorite segments of SpongeBob. Those are pretty much the ones I would definitely watch on the rerun.
All right, so what's your number 9?
My number 9 is Ren and Stimpy.
All right. Speaking of which.
Boy, oh boy, Ren and Stimpy. Ren and Stimpy, don't get me wrong, I remember watching it a lot, being bombarded by Ren and Stimpy when it would come on, but I just, as a kid, I didn't fully get it. I didn't fully grasp it, like, as it went on. But, now looking back on, this is a show looking back on, I have much more reverence and respect for it now than I used to, especially knowing all the behind-the-scenes stuff. I think it's fascinating. And just looking at the show as a whole, it's great and subversive with these clever adult implications, It's like you have... Like John Cristoforetti, you'll hear people complain about network censors and everything, and there are some creators where they kind of need censorship to get the best out of them. I think that was John Cristoforetti. That's why it's such a fascinating struggle.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, look what happened when he didn't have censorship.
Exactly, and same thing with the majority of Family Guy. I mean, if you look at current Family Guy versus old Family Guys, that you need a certain amount of like kind of battle to get kind of the best byproduct out there. Even again, you heard this whole interesting intellectual argument of like if it's not the intended result yet we still love it, is it if the artist isn't happy with the final result, is it really the best it could be? That sort of argument. And I just love that out of all that kind of battle between Nickelodeon and John Cristoforetti on a regular basis, they still deliver a really good byproduct that this is really talked about. And it's so great and subversive. It's like you have Peter Lorre as a chihuahua and Larry Fine as a cat, and it's such an awesome out of left field pairing. I love it.
Right.
You get these psychodramas and these insane ideas, but with such conviction and quality. That's the thing. It's
like super serious melodramas to go along with it.
Yeah, I mean, episodes, for example, and one of them I'm sure we're definitely familiar with. There's Stimpy's invention, of course, the famous Happy Happy Joy Joy, which is essentially it's John Cristoforetti's Citizen Kane. That's the episode he had complete control over. Everything is to his specification for that one. So essentially, if you ever look for like what John Cristoforetti's at least at the time, in the 90s, John Kricfalusi, before he went a little off the rails, not that we don't love him, we love him. We love you, Johnny. Is that that's just absolutely to his specifications. And of course, the famous thing of like they wanted to change the duck to a beaver. No, it has to be a duck. Use a duck to weld the thing. Just the most ridiculous demands, but he had absolute control, a Citizen Kane level of control over that episode. And,
oh my god!
You have that, which is like. That is the most psychotic out of all the Ren and Stimpy episodes, but again, the most awesome at the same time. It goes so dark for a kid's show, yet still over the silliest of things. Like Stimpy wants to make his buddy happy, and he does these horrific things when you think about it. He puts a mind control hat on him, and he makes him happy to the point he's bashing himself on the head with a hammer.
Yeah, I mean, this show is definitely very subversive. I have a lot of memories as a kid growing up with it, just being like, oh man, Rugrats is over and now we have to watch this weird stuff. But as an adult, Dragon, I absolutely agree. I think as an adult, Ren and Stimpy resonates, and that's very odd to say considering how much of the show is built upon crude humor and whatnot, but I think it's kind of just the way that John K. just kind of subverts that crude humor and makes the crude humor into something that you can truly look at and be like, this is art. It's ugly, but it's art.
Yeah. And look at Son of Stimpy. We talked about for Christmas in July. It's another one. Again, it's the most absurd, gross out premise, yet it's the most beautiful things you've ever seen.
Right, yeah. Okay.
And now, last one I need to talk about. There's a fun story attached to this. A Visit to Anthony. Now, Tiki, A Visit to Anthony was based as a famous episode of Ren and Stimpy that was based on a fan letter, their first fan letter. Basically, after the show started to premiere, they got a fan letter. I want to say after the first episode, at least in the first season, they got a fan letter back when people used to get those. Now it's a series of conflicting tweets. But,
yes.
Point is, based on a fan letter from a little boy named Anthony asking for Ren and Stimpy to visit him, and P.S. bring your costumes.
Okay.
Adorable. Basically, John Kricfalusi rips this thing off the Xerox. He goes into the room with the writers now. And, hey guys, listen, we're gonna do a cartoon with this kid in it.
Nice.
This kid who sent us this nice fan letter, and here's what's awesome. That's the famous episode where you have the parody of John K.'s father as the giant imposing Canadian man. And then you have and the actual kid. This is sweet, Tiki. The actual Anthony that wrote the letter is Anthony in the show. Did the voice? That is awesome. And the last thing I'm going to say on Ren and Stimpy is the reaction. I found this out today. The reaction from the other creators at this time, the ones that were celebrating today, really, is that Class B from Class B Cuspo. She was very impressed by it, because again, this is what kids did. John K. was very proud to admit that he knew what kids wanted to see, and boy did he deliver. It was gross out stuff, but he did in the best, most awesome way. And Jenkins, the Doug creator, Jenkins respected and loved what he did, but he thought it wasn't for kids, which he's not entirely wrong about.
No, that's not entirely inaccurate. I think Adult Swim was made for stuff like Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah, but defined a generation and raised the bar, because there are actually a few creators that we're going to be getting to, at least a few shows that were heavily again, the big thing on Nickelodeon that attracted the Nickelodeon of all places was Ren and Stimpy.
Sure.
My number one pick, I'm not going to tell you who, my number one pick, that was the thing kind of drew him the Nick. It was Ren and Stimpy.
All right, fair enough.
All right.
Okay, so my number 9 is the most 90s of all the 90s Nickelodeon shows. That's right, you guessed it. It's the totally radical, totally tubular Rocket Power! I'm sorry, Dragon. All my nostalgia and my 90s feels, I can't not put this on the list. This show came out at a time when Tony Hawk was like the god of the world.
Literally.
And it just took full advantage of that. It took full advantage of the skate culture. And what I love about this show, Dragon, is how down to earth it was in a lot of ways. I mean, granted, yeah, sure, there were some over the top, extreme sports segments here and there, right? But what I really love about this show was the character dynamics and the setting, specifically the setting. I love Ocean Shores. We've talked about it before. Ocean Shores is a combination of Santa Cruz, California, and Venice Beach, California. It's kind of got the locales of Santa Cruz and the culture of Venice Beach kind of wrapped into one town, which I think is really cool. I think it's one of my favorite locations in a Nickelodeon show. I love the Shore Shack. It's kind of like a home base on that show.
Oh yeah, I love that location too.
Of course, we've got Raymundo and Tito, who I think are still to this day absolutely the standout stars of this show. It's like, you know, I love the stuff the kids do, but every time you see Raymundo and Tito, they're absolutely the most entertaining things as adults. But
if you look at just the setting of Ocean Shores, it feels very kind of Steven Universe-esque when you really look at it. It was kind of the original kind of universe kind of setting.
I mean, the reason why I'm hesitant to say that is that I feel like Ocean Shores was kind of like a realistic depiction of what a surf town is like, whereas Beach City, I mean, I guess Beach City, like the city itself, not necessarily the temple. You know,
I mean, just the idea of kind of going for like kind of a real world kind of you have a pier and they have like a pier versus kind of a boardwalk.
Sure. And then there's a skate park where all the punks hang out. Anyways, let's just kind of quickly break down the characters. Like we have, I love the best friend dynamic between Otto and Twister. I had a best friend in middle school that really reminds me of Twister. And my favorite dynamic on the show, besides probably the aforementioned obvious Raymundo and Tito, is definitely Sam and Reggie. I love
that was my favorite too.
Yeah. Sam and Reggie really came together. It's like there was never anything romantic between the two of them. It was never like oh, will they, won't they? It was just they were always just super good friends with each other. They like totally were on each other's level from the moment they met, and yeah. I think that's a friendship that really carried through.
I gotta tell you though, if I ever was to imagine where they'd be, years from now, I would like to think the two of them maybe they got together. I don't know.
I like that the show didn't focus on that.
Yeah.
The show could have very easily had that be like a big tension, like oh, Sam and Reggie, but no, instead it's just like. It's just a dynamic of the characters that they just genuinely really got along with each other.
Yeah. I tell you, Rocket Power is
the worst element, much like Steven Universe. Is this a reoccurring trend, Dragon? Is this a reoccurring trend? Characters named Lars. Characters named Lars are just inherently bad.
Again, I think the other Lars has more redeeming qualities, but this Lars not.
Oh, I agree. The other Lars is like Steven Universe himself compared to this Lars. But I don't know. Like the show, the episodes, I don't really have there are kind of some event episodes. I love the Halloween one. I love the one where anything involving the amusement park. I really like. There's the one where they all get caught in the storm, but just in general, I just thought the show was just a really, really cool depiction of beach culture, and it still stands the test of time for me, at least in terms of being a time capsule of what that time period was like. So, all right.
There are two Rock Paper episodes I want to highlight real quick that do kind of stick with me. One I watched recently is kind of held blast in the past. It was the episode where they go to kind of this fancy kind of high upscale club they had a coupon for, and it's remember they're going in there like they accidentally eat the sheep's stomach.
Yeah.
It's basically that idea of kind of the snooty kind of 80s style kind of like this is a beach club, that sort of thing. They basically they dive in the pool and they make a whole mess because it's such an uptight place. Like man, there's no fun here. And the other one, the most. For me, this is one of the most memorable. I just love the episode. They kind of have a Willy Wonka experience with Tony Hawk. I just love that because it was.
I think that episode's fairly over the top. It kind of breaks the realism of the show a little bit. But yeah, you're right. It is glorious '90s cheese.
I know. I just love it. It kind of in some ways it felt like it was kind of the Nickelodeon live action shows communicated through animation because it's like a lot of kind of stunts and you fell in like these
yeah.
And stuff and all sorts of. By the way, we should also mention like on our list we might have some picks where it's we do have some live action shows mentioned.
Oh, absolutely. I
don't know if we open with that or even in the description if we mention that hey we're also going to be talking about some live action.
Well, I just said Nickelodeon series. I mean, anyway.
That's fine. I just forgot. I didn't know. Okay, so.
Okay.
Number 8 then.
Yes.
Okay, so again, with the live action thing said, Double Dare / Double Dare 2000.
Nice.
My God, I love this show, and I was so delighted today. I found this out today as I was doing some research that the same. Basically, Double Dare has kind of made a little bit of a resurgence. I don't know how permanent it is, but there is the original game show host who has obsessive compulsive disorder who. Unbelievably, he hosted that show. Getting
Mad respect.
Absolutely. And I'm so amazed that he and the cast of all that, oddly enough, they had a game of Double Dare. And I tell you, they brought back the sets and everything. They did.
Why did you not tell me about this?
Well, that's what happens when we run a little late.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
I tell you, the original cast of all that, they returned and they played Double Dare, and they used like if it wasn't the identical, just pulled them out of storage. It looked identical to the old.
Right.
It was in a different setting, but they pretty much brought back all the. I love the oversized props, folks. I just love kind of the oversized props and everything. Brought them back,
like the giant teeth and stuff like that.
Yes, giant teeth were there. The giant hamster wheel. Make the messy thing. They're wearing the helmets, the blues and the reds.
Oh, the Alaskan pipeline.
I don't know if they had that in the Resurgence, but yeah, I remember that from the original.
Okay.
Back to the original show.
Yeah.
Again, this was my favorite game show ever as a kid. I just loved it. I still love thinking about it. I had the home game of this.
Oh my god, what was the home game like? Enlighten us.
Well, I forget if we had slime or not. It was a long time. It's like, point is, you had like you had trivia cards, you had physical challenges, and of course that was the best element of Double Dare 2000. It's a great idea. If you have these fun trivia questions, if you get trivia questions wrong or you don't know the answer, you can opt for a physical challenge, which is all this insanity and craziness. It all ends with this awesome kind of this race to get all the flags amidst all of these oversized, hilarious, gross out in the best possible way props. Set pieces and props, I should say. And I wrote my notes here before I saw this. I would love to see it again, and I saw it again. I'm very happy with it.
I reckon I really wouldn't be surprised if this gets picked up for a full-time renewal.
I hope so. I mean, I think it's just Double Dare is my favorite of the Nickelodeon live-action game shows, specifically game shows. Like I know you skew towards a few of the other ones, but for me though,
like that example, right there.
Yep, but for me it's got to be Double Dare or Double Dare 2000, whatever you want to label it. Just the premise of Double Dare, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love Double Dare as well. I just kind of thought it was appropriate that one of us would have Double Dare on our list and the other would have Legend of the Hidden Temple. Absolutely. And for me, the thing that kind of puts Legend of the Hidden Temple, I mean, I'll get into it later when we get to that on my list, but it's kind of just the obvious kind of like the adventure, the mythology of Legend of the Hidden Temple. But Double Dare is a lot of fun, and obviously, like, mad respect to the host. And yeah, it was very creative, and it was very energetic, very fast paced, really, really good stuff. Okay.
One last thing I just want to mention Double Dare. Double Dare also kind of represents Nickelodeon very well with the whole kind of the slime gimmick.
Yes.
Was basically Nickelodeon and the Double Dare represented this so well is that it could be a place where you can have the best time ever. You're gonna remember this for years, which we are now. And it'll be such a mess, but my God, such a memorable mess. It will leave stains in your mind. It's that much of a mess, but stains in the best possible way. These are like stains of memory. Whether they be green, orange, or fudge sundae colored.
Okay. So the next selection on my list, Doug Walker, I hope you're not watching this. It is Doug! Obviously, specifically the Nickelodeon era of Doug. Screw the Disney shit. But, no, Doug, the reason why it's on the list, A, of course, the historical context. That is kind of a factor here. B, I just really love the down-to-earth quality of Doug. To me, Doug almost kind of represents a Calvin and Hobbes sort of character where you have this kid who's very obviously a daydreamer and kind of, like, seriously, Doug is almost kind of like a teenage Calvin and Hobbes without the Hobbes. It's, because you've just got this teenager kind of inventing all these personas for himself. I love, like Smash Adams, Quail Man, just all that stuff is just really, really fun. The fantasies in this show are really, really elaborate. And, of course, the thing about Doug that I don't really think holds up is its side characters. Skeeter's fine. I think Patty Mayonnaise might be one of the most...
Roger's memorable.
Roger's memorable, but I think Roger gets absolutely ruined in the Disney version.
He does, but you gotta respect the Nickelodeon version of Roger, where Roger he's kind of he's not absolutely a bully, but he's like, don't get me wrong, he's the bully character, but like that he's like he buddies up to Doug a lot of the time. He's not all
absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Of course, Roger voiced by the great Billy West,
of course, who was a staple of Nickelodeon.
Totally, not the first.
And also again these also the voice of Doug himself too.
Right. But no, I don't know, Dragon. I just think Doug is such a charming combination of just laid-back, slice-of-life type stuff, and then also these elaborate fantasies, and I think that's what made Doug a winning formula.
Another thing with the... I'm sorry, Tiki.
No, I'm just saying, like, it's just like the show wouldn't really be what it was without one or the other. Like, you had to have the slice-of-life stuff. you had to have the fantasy stuff. And that's mostly what I don't really have a ton to say about Doug, because it's not really that complicated of a show. But the thing I really admire in Dragon, yeah, it's definitely like, I can totally see how this would be the one Nickelodeon show to come out of a comic strip, because it absolutely has the tone and pace and style of a comic strip to me. So, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, and with Doug, it's kind of funny that, again, that lineup I talked about, it's just that amazing lineup that's still in the order. You get it's Doug, Rugrats, then Ren and Stimpy. Is that Doug is like one end of the spectrum, like tell your your classic kind of milquetoast kind of 50s kind of Archie-esque show.
Right.
Other end, you have complete insanity and anarchy by 90s standards with Ren and Stimpy. In the middle, you have this kind of wholesome, kind of family-friendly, kind of happy days block with Rugrats.
But Rugrats absolutely had some dark undertones to it that Doug didn't have.
Certainly. But again, I just love that Rugrats kind of in the middle. It's a mix of both. It's a mix of kind of the wholesome and kind of the implications. It's a great little balance. And when I remember seeing the Doug movie and seeing the live show at which Disney part? I want to say it's Animal. Which
I would say Hollywood Studios, probably.
Maybe Hollywood Studios years ago, folks. Now I don't believe it's around any longer. It could be.
No.
I was thinking. Here's the thing. Every time I think of something, I'm thinking of the Florida one. I'm kind of thinking that you're going to undercut me with. Wait a minute. No, it's actually at Disneyland. You didn't know about this.
No. Doug never came to Disneyland. I can confirm that.
I just want to make sure, because I'm always paranoid that I'm saying, oh yeah, because I only know one park, the other park. It's always that kind of confusing with the Disney parks. My point
for the record, your Pirates of the Caribbean is shit compared to our Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh yeah, I think I don't know that. Do you?
I'm contractually obligated to say that every podcast. I'm sorry.
Why do you think I never do glowing reviews when we talk about Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride? Why do you think I never? Because I have my point is, even when I'm watching kind of the Disney version of Doug, I can only think of the good version, which is the Nickelodeon version.
Of course. And like I said, the reason why it's not as high is just because it's a very, very simple, very laid-back show. It's not really got that memorable quality to it. I mean, it is memorable to a certain extent, but it doesn't really pop like some of the other shows on the list.
Doug was pleasant, trying to make everyone happy, and he was kind of the Kermit the Frog of the Nicktoons,
I like that analogy. Okay. All right, so you're number 7, Dragon?
My number 7, Kenan and Kel.
Yes! Who loves orange soda?
Kel loves orange soda.
Yeah! Okay.
I was hoping you were going to say, is it true, but okay.
Is it true?
I do. Oh.
All right.
So, my God, Kenan and Kel, it was such a great comedy show. It was a great comedy duo. You had all these fun shenanigans they get to. The reason it's kind of in the 7 mark on the list here, because again, basically this point onwards where we get to really difficult position. I would love to rank this higher, but there's so many other great shows.
Right.
But I have great connection to this show. It's I think on some level this exposed me to kind of the Abbott and Costello like shenanigans, because it's in various ways is like kind of the comedy duo like Abbott. Because it's even in the theme song they say like Abbott and Costello. They do. It's like with the crew.
You're totally right.
And I guess I didn't get it as a kid, but loving it.
Right.
I have even more appreciation for the show. Oh my God, it's like this was my original comedy duo, but then they're kind
like
of
a comedy duo to it. Oh my God.
I know. It's like
childhood inception.
Yes, and here's the comedy duo that was my original comedy duo, and then they actually borrowed from the real original comedy duo.
Right.
Like, my God, it's a reason it's kind of also a little higher on the list than the other picks is it is so rewatchable. I have the series on some DVDs, and I rewatch it constantly. It's like I will binge the entire series because it's like a few discs. I forget how many, but you have like a few seasons to work with, and I'll watch them. I'll basically go through the series, and it's a lot of fun. My favorite episode still, at least the most memorable, most nostalgic for me, is the Florida episode, because again I've been to Florida. I've been to the back when they had some Nickelodeon stuff in Florida, and I was like, I have all these memories flood back to me. I just love that.
Right.
Is that I drink orange soda to this day because of the show.
Oh my!
Like, hear this? Listen. Orange soda.
Oh jeez. Oh God. Okay.
That's how much I love the show. I drink it to this day because
and
of
also
that show.
Tubaphone, folks. It's the show that introduced us to the wonderful product that is the Tubaphone.
Spell T-U-B.
Oh, jeez. No, I just really love the dynamics between Keenan and Kel. It was just, I definitely think Keenan and Kel, the purpose it served was to kind of introduce kids to the concept of a live action primetime sitcom where, you had stuff like Salute to Your Shorts and stuff like that, but that was all kind of like Canadian imports and done from, and would air on the daytime and stuff like that. Keenan and Kel, along with all that, which we're going to get to, definitely kind of set the precedent for, for these, for kids growing up watching it, where it's like, okay, I kind of get the whole, like, it's just people sitting around talking, making jokes at each other and acting wacky for the most part, but I get it, it's like, Keenan and Kel definitely had a big energy to it. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so is that all you have to say?
Yeah, just folks, it's their chemistry, it holds up, and a lot of people say it was starred and all that, which is true. But I tell you though, Keenan and Kel, that's one that, out of all the live action Nickelodeon shows, that's my favorite. Because I mean, Drake and Josh, as I mentioned when we mentioned that Carly, that's a good one. But believe me, it doesn't hold a candle to the clever. Just again, may not have been the most cerebral, the most super impressive show, but just the sheer comedy, the timing, just the banter between those two. It was magic.
Okay, so speaking of comedy, timing, and banter, I have been watching this show for about 2 days. I heard about this show through Rebel Taxi. Rebel Taxi does his kind of like biannual best modern cartoons lists. And I've got to say, Dragon, this show is amazing, and it's one of my personal favorite shows that's ever been on Nickelodeon, just because it's got such a wide variety of characters, and it's such a simple and relatable premise that anyone can kind of get behind. I've got to put the Loud House at number 7. I've got to do it, man. 2016 selection at number 7. This show has delivered, and I hope this show takes off. I hope this show brings Nickelodeon into a new era. This show totally feels like a throwback to old school Nickelodeon. Absolutely,
really,
100%. Even more so than Harvey Beaks, because Harvey Beaks was really kind of just J.C. Quinzel trying to do his own thing. But this show feels like old school Nickelodeon in the best way. So the premise of the show is that the main character, Lincoln, is the one brother in a house with 10 sisters. The beautiful thing about this show, Dragon, is how all the sisters react off of Lincoln. How, like, every episode, the sisters, their personalities are fleshed out so incredibly well, and the gags are so incredibly well timed. The scripts are ingeniously written so that it's 10-minute episodes, but each 10-minute episode, you get a good chunk of time devoted to each of the siblings, and you really get to know this huge family over just these really ridiculous but very down-to-earth scenarios. Like, there's this one episode where the sisters find out that he's being bullied, and they all start freaking out and wanting to beat the bully up until they find out that it's a girl that's been bullying him. And then they're all like, "Oh!" And even like the goth girl who's like, "I usually don't show my emotions, but oh." So it's a lot of fun, Dragon. It's so well timed. The characters are so likable. I fell in love with practically each one of these personalities. It's great. It's really great, and I hope that the show catches on. To hell with breadwinners. I want to see more of this kind of stuff. This is what Nickelodeon should have been producing for the past 10 years, is something like this show. I am so down with the show. I am so behind the show. You can see it in my eyes. I have been watching it and loving the crap out of it. Every episode has been a gem. All the characters are completely memorable. It is so well timed. It is so well paced. It is so sharp and funny. I can't recommend it enough. The Loud House, easily one of the best Nickelodeon shows to come on in the past 10 years. Easily.
Really? That's some high praise right there.
Easily.
Okay. Number
Check
6.
it out.
Number 6, right?
Yeah, number 6.
Number 6, Rugrats.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised that didn't crack your top 5. Okay.
Well, I mean, the Rugrats, like a few of the other shows, there was a decline.
Legacy problem.
Yeah, there's a legacy problem. Again, this one probably should have ended after Rugrats and
Rugrats and Paris. Yeah, yeah.
Definitely should have ended after Rugrats in Paris.
Right.
You know, it was a high note to go out on. Really nice ending. Paris is a good movie. Just should have ended right there. But
I think Paris is a better movie than the original Rugrats movie by a pretty wide margin.
I prefer Paris to the original Rugrats movie. I'm not sure if it's better, but I do prefer it.
Okay.
Anyway, oh, by the way, a little fun fact. Rugrats is a Navy term.
Nice.
Little factoid there for you. So, Rugrats, it's a lovely, imaginative, exploratory show. That's what it is. It's so imaginative. We start almost, at least in the early seasons, we started every episode with kind of these great perspective shots. It's from a baby's point of view, and we kind of we zoom out and we see what it actually is, and it opens up these wonderful interpretive ideas like, well, if you look at something from a different angle, it can be a completely scary and or really bizarre thing until you it sums up the Rugrats premise in an image of like, okay, well, we see something from a different perspective that may look, scary or something else. You go back and you say, oh, okay, well, it's something we've seen in everyday life, so it's not actually scary, but you can imagine how that would wig out a baby.
Right.
And it's such a great premise. Like I said, that what was his name? It's Paul Germain had in the pitch of like the whole it's if babies could talk, essentially, if babies could talk, what would they say? It's that illogical. It's coursing with a logical logic. It's like, well, from a baby's perspective, this is what they would think. It's like the leap of logic. Okay, well, let's say we were able to understand babies. What would they be saying to each other? What would they in their community of infants be speaking of? It says, well, my daddy's been doing this weird thing lately. I don't know what to make of it. Oh yeah, we had that problem. It's like this great civility among toddlers. I love it. It's this great civility among infants, and it's like their own little community, while we have the adults being the actual infants because they're neglectful, they're stupid at times.
Mm-hmm.
Which is another reason this is not higher on my list because
D.D. Pickles.
Primarily, but here's the thing: I can rewatch episodes up to Paris. Those episodes specifically. I mean, if I had a preference, probably before Dill, but still the Dill episodes are okay. My point is, I can rewatch these episodes. I can feel very nostalgic. I can feel a really strong nostalgic connection just being watching these for the first time. Particularly, there are two episodes that really grabbed me: the Vegas episode and the Grand Canyon.
Oh, the Vegas one. Oh, absolutely. I'm right there with you. I had a VHS of that thing.
I have a bizarre story for you. Are you ready for it?
Okay. Yeah.
So, just with my connection with the Vegas episode, it's so ridiculous. I want to say I was in grade school. Point is, in grade school, like, I helped out the librarian and stuff, because I was an avid reader,
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And basically, they were like these books that, like, pretty much you can tell, like, these books are kind of like, no one really cares about them. And, like, I was allowed to take a book home. And this one book I kept looking at constantly when I went to the library was the print version of the Vegas episode. It was the exact same episode, but it was put into a book. And I guess it was a little damaged, a little worse for wear, and that's why it was like a little mark on it saying, yeah, pretty much we can there's no real attachment to this one. Anyway, I was allowed to like pick a book or something, take it home, and I picked that one. So, oh my god. I remember that. I've seen that episode. Oh my god, it's the episode in book form. I remember watching the episode, that awesome beginning where they're all there, like Tommy leaves the poor little stuffed tiger when he's going off there. It's like I just love it when the Rugrats are kind of on the road. They're going to these places. But
that episode was very much kind of represented the excitement and the rush of going on a vacation when you're a little kid.
Yes, exactly. And again, I'm with you with the VHS tape thing too, because I remember
all the orange VHS tapes. Am I right?
Yes. I remember I had like one of the Rugrats like 10th anniversary things or something.
Oh, Decade of Diapers.
There. Yes, Decade of Diapers. A little 30-minute thing at the end, or a little 15-minute little in retrospect thing. It's so much fun. The Grand Canyon is one of my. I don't know why. Is every time I watch Grand Canyon, it's the one that always jumps to my head. And I think there's a specific reason for it, which we'll get to a little later on about the history of the Grand Canyon. But point is, Grand Canyon. It's a road episode. It's Angelica and Tommy go on this adventures. Love how kind of it's like the biggest adventures in life. They're climbing mountains of tires, but it's in the most kind of mundane of circumstances. They're on a car trip to the Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's the show has like a wonderful statement on venturing out, conquering fears, and not giving up. Those are the three hallmarks of the show. It's about you venture out to these places like Vegas or like the Grand Canyon, or even like the smaller things. Oh, my other favorite Rugrats episode. I know this one of my absolute favorites. It's the unfortunately I don't know the name, but it's the Noir episode. It's the one where they parody the Maltese Falcon. That's my favorite.
Yes.
That might be my favorite episode. I just love because I love the Maltese Falcon. I love the detective. Tommy is the detective. I have the PC game. I have the computer game from that way back in the day where you have a few Rugrats adventures. Like there's that one. There's the one where like
there's
Chucky.
The Indiana Jones one.
I don't think that's the one I have.
I think the Indiana Jones one was for N64. I want to say.
One is on the PC game you have, and I'm not a huge PC gamer. Like back in the day, I'd play games on computer. As a young kid, Rugrats, I'd have. And basically, there was one of the detective stories. Pretty much, it plays even more like Maltese Falcon than the episode, which is awesome. It was your Tommy solving a mystery. The other thing was it was the episode where Chucky he tries to return the turtle to the fountain with the other turtles. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
It's like in the pet store too. It's like, oh my gosh, so many great memories. I found out a mind-blowing fact, by the way. Angelica and Chucky, they were added after the pilot. They weren't original characters of the show.
Oh yeah, I knew that. In the show, it was just Tommy, Phil, and Lil, right? They were the original three.
Also, I think Grandpa and Grandpa Lou.
Yeah, sure. But Tommy, Phil, and Lil were the original babies.
Yeah, and then basically, and Chucky was almost initially conceived as a bully. They were kind of throwing the idea of Chucky being the bully character, and they kind of looked at him and says, hey, it didn't last long. I'm just saying they initially
That's
came
kind
up
of like shades of Woody being the villain in Toy Story a little bit.
God. But it's like Chucky saying, well, maybe he's the bully. And then they almost said, I don't know, he doesn't really look like a bully to me. And then they kind of realize, let's have Angelica, which would be the most evil villain ever. And actually, members on the staff, the creators, they actually do view her as a villain very, very vehemently.
Right.
Is that again, you have a character who can be really mean to the babies, yet so sweet and sugary to the adults.
Of course.
But again, it's the show. It's fun, memorable. We also have like some fun, memorable parental characters, like the best of which being Grandpa Lou. Oh my God, I love Grandpa Lou. Those episodes are always my favorites, by the way. I just love the Grandpa Lou episodes.
Betty, I kind of mentioned this before, but Betty never really stood out to me in the series, but she does kind of have more memorable roles in the movie, specifically Rugrats in Paris and the Rugrats movie.
And Chaz, of course, Chaz Finster is another great one.
Of course.
Yeah, you know, Chucky, and we could go on for hours. Can
I mention I want to mention just some of my favorite early episodes, just really quick, just kind of list them off. I love the one where they get stuck in the toy store.
That is a great one.
The toy store
the toy store has a time machine.
Yes, just inexplicably has a working time machine.
That sounds like the King Kong parody way back
to the American Revolution to meet George Washington.
It's like, what is it, like Borg 1-8 or Morg 1-8, whatever. Giant.
I love the one where the babies think Stu's a robot when he's sleepwalking. Specifically, I love the atmosphere of that episode and how it's genuinely kind of creepy. I really like the garbage truck episode. Again, kind of it goes for kind of a horror movie vibe. And
the drain episode is a good one.
Oh God, the drain! Oh Jesus Christ!
Our kid got sucked down the drain.
Yep, that was a good one. Let's see. I'm trying to rack my brain for any others. No, mostly to tell you the truth, the big two that stick out to me are Stu being the robot and the toy store. So, okay.
Okay, well, just to wrap this up. Again, Rugrats overall got a lot of fun experience. Basically, when I'm flipping channels and I see a Rugrats episode, and it's it's before Paris, I'm usually gonna watch it because again a lot of those fond memories just come flooding back, and again the stories for the most part they hold up. But here's why it's number 6 and not number 5, folks.
Okay.
There are elements that do not. It's kind of upon repetition they really wear the series down in aspects. Even in the good episodes, you do have this. It's like when you love something so much and you revisit, like, oh my God, I didn't even catch that as a kid. Where the parents' neglect is ridiculous. It really is. I mean, these kids would be dead 50 times over the attention these parents pay. I mean, there are a few exceptions. Don't get me wrong. Like Charlotte's pretty okay. You have, of course, Grandpa Lou would be the best because he falls asleep a lot. It's not like he's the most responsible. He just falls asleep a lot. And
I think it's more kind of like irresponsible for the parents to leave them with Grandpa Lou to begin with.
Well, I mean, usually they're inside the house usually, which is a little less dangerous. But
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Point is, I mean, Lou, he's kind of he is the responsible and only when he's awake though, which is a double-sided sword. Regardless, point is, like, Dee Dee is the absolute worst culprit in this. And I will restrain my.
Yes, we know.
Gotta. So that's the thing, folks. Just what it boils down to is, as much as when I rewatch the Rugrats, you have the early animation, which is a little choppy, and it's a little.
I think the early animation is charming, but that's just me. It's kind of like looking back on an old Mickey Mouse cartoon or something.
Well, no. I mean, no. I like the early animation is okay, but I'm saying the really early. I'm talking like the early season 1 animation. That's when it's inconsistent. You have to hit kind of a good stride with that. Sometimes I'm saying it goes off model a lot. That doesn't necessarily put me off. It just looks really. It reminds you, oh man, it was really off model in the early days.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. Just the parents neglected because it really just seems super horrifying when you realize how irresponsible these parents were at times. Like how much danger these kids were actually put in because of their neglectful parent. Tommy got kidnapped, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
And no one knew. No one knew. Oh, Dee Dee, just such a horrible. Dee Dee is. I don't know what. Dee Dee has no redeemable qualities whatsoever. Nothing.
Okay.
Just nothing whatsoever. And basically what I'm saying, all these elements that kind of, when you come back, you also see kind of horrible could be at times and get away with murder. It kind of taints the memory a smidge, just a smidge. That's what I'm saying. It taints the memory a smidge. And with those early episodes, and of course the later episodes, just really, they just kind of, all the teeth were taken out of the Rugrats. No pun intended.
Okay, fair enough.
That's really all it is. But again, a lot of fond memories on the stuff I really do love, though.
All right. So my number 6 is, there's a lot of nostalgia attached to this. It is the Wild Thornberrys. Oh yes. So Dragon, I've mentioned this before, but the Wild Thornberrys just kind of like reminds me of my own family in a number of ways. My family owned a pet store, and through the pet store, we know a lot of kind of like wildlife style people. We know someone that runs an animal sanctuary, where they kind of like rescue and rehabilitate giraffes and stuff like that. We also know someone who runs she goes to classrooms and does stuff with animals. So regardless, like, these types of people being in my life is kind of like what gave me a love of the Wild Thornberrys, because I absolutely kind of have a kinship with animals that way. Nigel Thornberry, I mean, what can you say about Nigel Thornberry? He's a 90s Nicktoon icon. He's like, you could put him on the Rushmore of 90s Nicktoons for all I'm concerned.
Well, he has the nose for it.
Exactly.
I'm the complete opposite with animals. I am not an animal guy whatsoever.
I mean, I'm not like a dog guy because I'm allergic to dogs. I love cats, but this isn't a discussion about animals.
Well, it kind of is. The show featuring animals.
Well, I love the premise of the show. If this show had the premise of just the family going around doing the nature documentaries and it didn't include the talking to animals thing, I honestly think the show might be even better. Because I think Dragon, like, the thing that kind of kept this out of the top 5 for me was the same thing that kept Rugrats out of the top 5 for you. Is that the show, for me, gets a little repetitive when you rewatch it. You kind of start to notice that each episode kind of takes on a certain formula where Eliza will start talking to an animal and get herself involved in a situation that she really has no business getting herself involved in. And, and then, of course, trouble's going to ensue and whatnot. And just, like, I remember, like, just one of these times, I just like to see Eliza and her family just have a nice time filming some animals and shit, and no kind of crazy shenanigans happening. Having said that, I think the show's a lot of fun. I think all the characters really, really work. I think every single member of the Thornberrys family is memorable. Donnie very much reminds me of my little brother in a very, very sentimental kind of way. Darwin's great, of course. I love the Convoy. The Convoy is like one of the most awesome cartoon vehicles. The Convoy. I'm sorry.
I was saying, whether if it actually is Convoy, so they call it Convoy. The Convoy.
I think you're right. I think it is Convoy, because Convoy would be like a fleet of trucks, I think. But I digress. I actually think probably my least favorite element of this show is probably the whole talking to animals and mysticism part of it, because I really love the family in it, and I really love kind of the characters interacting off each other. And I think the show kind of goes off the rails a little bit when we focus so much on, Eliza being the, kind of being the Mary Sue character, just going after any animal that needs help. And that's where the show really starts to get repetitive. I really feel like the stronger episodes are the episodes that involve characters like Debbie or Nigel more, because those are really where the show shines. But like I said, I just really quick, I have a lot of personal nostalgia for this thing. This show might be the Nickelodeon show that reminds me the most of my own personal life, which is odd to say given the premise, but it's kind of just based on the people I know and in kind of the environment I grew up in. But yeah, I love it.
I'll tell you though, with Wild Thornberrys is never one that's like I don't get me wrong, man. I've enjoyed episodes, but when I was watching him back in the day, I was like, I kind of like the other ones a little more than this.
Okay.
Again, I like the again. I do love the design of the convy, and I love the premise. The parents are documentarians, which I did love that, and then the wonderful vocal performance of Tim Curry, and I like Darwin's. I always like Darwin being kind of the sardonic kind of this sidekick, and I always like that relationship between him and Eliza. However, I gotta tell you though, with the premise, that shaman, kind of the warthog shaman guy.
Yes.
Awfully specific, kind of a caveat with the magical ability. Like, don't tell anyone. Really, I'm just saying, awfully specific, and awfully inconvenient. She helped you out. And you're going to give her his gift with that specific caption.
I do like how that whole thing played out in the movie, though. As silly as that premise, though, as silly as that premise is, I think it played out in the movie really well.
One of my favorites, off the top of my head, I always remember this one. Not saying it's my favorite or anything, just one that always comes to mind is the episode where it's actually has the least talking animals in it when you think about it. It's Eliza and her sister. They go to they try to beat mom and dad to a film festival so they can switch the footage because they have they're basically trying to avoid this bathtub footage.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
because I just love the premise of they trade.
That's what I'm saying, Dragon. That's exactly what I'm saying. The show was at its best when it was dealing with domestic family situations like that.
Yeah, man. What I loved about it was just this episode. It's a very, I don't know what, I know there's a term for this sort of formula too. And maybe if you got it, you can tell me. I don't think it will. One is it's this episode where it's you have a journey, a very, not a ticking clock precisely, but they have to get from point A to point B, and they're trade things to get along the way. It's kind of like an around the world in 80 days premise. It's we're gonna get here by all cost, and we have a set. Maybe it's ticking clock. I don't know. But you know what I mean. I just love it's a set premise. We gotta get from here to here, do this one thing, almost like a Mission Impossible type thing.
Right.
Yes, it's a fun one. Yeah, but yeah, Wild Thornberrys definitely does hold the place. I remember standing in line for that Nicktoons ride, and I can remember always seeing the Wild Thornberrys they had TV sets would play Wild Thornberrys.
Nice.
And the paint job was like Wild Thornberrys on the side.
All right, so let's get into the top 5, Dragon. What's your number 5 pick?
Number 5 may be the most nostalgic one I have on here. My God, Kablam.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that in. Okay, I'm glad
Kablam,
that's there. Nice.
Out of all the Nicktoons ever, I think I might have the most nostalgic.
I think Kablam is a Nicktoon that's kind of fallen off for a lot of people. I don't think as many people remember Kablam as something like Rugrats or Ren and Stimpy. You know what I mean?
Let me put it to you like this. I taped this show early in the mornings because I feared that I would never see it again.
Oh, God.
I love this show. So thankfully now it's on YouTube, and I have earned VHS copies on DVD to ensure that I have Kablam. But it was a showcase for animated shorts and pilots.
Prometheus and frickin' Bob.
Yeah. It was the Kablam, folks, was this wonderful show where it would showcase animated shorts and pilots. So basically, they could do shorts in a series of shorts, and also in case these.
It was kind of like a more creative version of What a Cartoon.
Yeah,
cartoon. It was it was kind of like that, except instead of What a Cartoon and cartoons being hey, here's a cartoon and here's a cartoon. Kablam had this awesome setup where literally everything in it was in the context of being something featured in a comic book that was hosted by these two animated hosts. And that was such a creative way to pull something like that off.
It was not only was it a talk show, but animated. It was a talk show within a comic book. That was animated. I think on some subconscious level, I think I liked it because it was a comic. I don't know.
Of course. And of course, Action League Now, I'm sure.
That absolutely was my favorite sketch. Well,
it was everyone's favorite.
That was my second favorite. I'm going to tell you why. So if I just reoccurring show, Action League now is my favorite little reoccurring short within the Kablam shows. My God, it was a parody of superheroes. It was with action figures, which is even cooler. As a kid,
it was like kind of like the ultimate in superhero mundanity in a way.
Yep, I desperately
Milkman with the power to melt.
Thunder Girl. Just flying like thunder. We had the cranky chief, and Bill the lab guy. I think it was Bill the lab guy. I could be wrong, but point is, the flesh. My God. But also Stinky Diver. I remember I actually had. I want to say
yes.
I want to say Burger King did a line of toys from Action League now, and unfortunately,
surprised if they did.
There were some. This is going to sound so pathetic. As a kid, I had this Tonka truck, and because I loved Action League, they didn't have the toys. I drew the figures on papers.
Oh my god! That's great. I love it.
I know.
I love it.
Sounds pathetic, but I only had.
No. I really appreciate it, man. I really appreciate it.
The only one I had.
That's what this podcast is about. Okay, that's what this podcast is about. Is kind of like embracing that '90s nostalgia.
I think the only one I ever had was Stinky Diver. Unfortunately, I might have gone by the wayside over the years. Basically, I think the only toys I remember ever seeing were Stinky Diver and Milkman. I haven't seen the other ones. I can assume with those two, the other ones have existed at some point. My God, Actually, now is my favorite. Again, it was this hilarious superhero parody within Kablam. I just love that. It was we had Henry and June. June was kind of like very much. And I look back on June was very much kind of like Ellen DeGeneres. But Henry's these two kids are hosting this animated show, which would showcase other animated shorts. So basically, you get like a whole variety of animated thing inside of a comic book, which you have like Prometheus and Bob, like you said, Life with Loopy, and I love that they were never in the same style. They were always in kind of like these different styles. Like Life with Loopy was kind of like a cardboard cutout stop motion thing almost.
Right.
Well, Prometheus and Bob was directly stop motion. Life with Loopy, it wasn't precisely stop motion, but they used like puppetry and cardboard cutouts and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so of course but in addition to the trademark shows along with the Action League now, I'm losing myself in nostalgia. Sorry, but the best for me, and I implore all of you, including you, Tiki, check it out on YouTube. I might have mentioned this once before, but I tell you, the best and most memorable short I ever saw. I still rewatch to this day. It's always imprinted on my memory, every iota, every second within the 7 minutes. It's called Utica Cartoon. Now, this is a short within there. Now, I know you don't know what that is off the top of your head. I'm saying this is the actual title. If you look search on YouTube, Utica Cartoon, UTICA Cartoon. It was a short about, and again, like kind of like, I don't know if they were feeling at pilots or what, and stuff like this, little shorts. It was basically about a simple, bizarre premise. It wasn't like off the wall like Ren and Stimpy Show. It was a little out there. It was this bear basically walks into a restaurant with his monkey pal. Bear and a monkey walk into like a hot dog place, and they basically has like a gift stick for 17 hot dogs. He basically wraps himself up into the competitive world of eating contest, where he eats 17 hot dogs and he beats the record, which means if you beat the record, the hot dogs are free, which means you don't have to pay for anything. And it seems like such a down-to-earth, realistic thing. Like, well, so he realized I can get free food as long as I beat the record each time. So he goes the next time, eats like 18 or so, and it's like free hot dogs. It basically gets wrapped up in like almost like a substance abuse thing in a way. It's like he becomes so wrapped in lifestyle, he overeats. That's the idea. He's overeating to the point where he's in trouble. Where, oh my God, I have like 100 and something hot dogs, like $1 a hot dog. So I mean, if I don't finish all of them, I'm gonna have to pay like 100 something, which is like out of my budget.
Right.
I know it does. I know I'm not selling it well, folks. The point is, it's a really obscure yet it's really well told in the story. It's really simplistic. It's really kind of streamlined. It's well told. It's everything. Almost everything you love in animation is kind of boiled down to the essentials. That's what it was. Something that was shown in Kablam. I loved it. It was always in the back of my mind. Years I had never saw it before. I always remembered it. Then I found it on YouTube. I remember that I looked for the title one day and I just found a premise real quick lined up. Was, oh my God, That's the card. That's the one from Kablam. I typed it in there as I was watching it. I was like, oh my god, this is mind blowing. Everything's on here, and Kablam is more of a showcase than an actual show. But that's why it's number 5 instead of like higher on the list, because I do nostalgically I adore this show. You know, the animation wasn't like the most impressive for the main show, for Henry and June. You know, it wasn't like you can tell like the models might be a little off at times, but because the show wasn't an actual show, it was more of a showcase of other mini shows. It's not high on the list, but it was an experience I can never forget. It was just some of the best years of my life. I love that show.
Okay, cool. So getting into my number 5, right there, before it goes away, The Amanda Show! Amanda Show! Let's go! Dragon, oh my god. I feel like this show has kind of like fallen by the wayside a little bit, and it's a shame that it has, because this show gave us Drake Bell and Josh Peck, and they've gone on to do other things, but I really, really love them specifically in this. I really think they were great kind of foils to Amanda Bynes in the show. This show had so many memorable sketches, so many memorable characters. Judge Trudy, of course, being like the big pop culture one at the time. Dragon, absolutely the best sketch of the history of the show, I think, was... Can you guess?
No, tell the folks. Okay.
It's the one where they all have to stay in the car because there's the money locked in the trunk.
That is one of my favorites.
So you've got the bailiff, you've got Judge Trudy,
Tony Pajamas.
I love Pajamas.
That was my favorite. I love the Tony Pajamas segments of the show. Those are my favorites.
I don't think that's what I'm saying. Like, I love Drake Bell, but I don't think he ever eclipsed Tony Pajamas. I think Tony Pajamas was.
Remember, it wasn't just Drake. It was Drake Bell and Josh Peck. That was one of the first. I want to say that's the first time they ever worked together. Was on the show.
It was the first. Yeah, that was definitely the origin of Drake and Josh for sure.
And those two played again another great comedy duo amongst all the Nickelodeon shows.
Of course,
those two in that show and the Tony Pajamas. I know I'm going off tangent real quick. With those two, there's this hilarious thing where Tony Pajamas is coming. It's basically kind of like a Scarface kind of Godfather parody. Whenever he walks in, and basically he's always leaping to Amanda Bynes' character's defense, like the Marissa Tomei's girlfriend. Mm-hmm. Just saying, Tony, why am I doing here? That sort of thing. And so then something goes wrong, and then basically, so you hear like a car skirting outside, you don't see it, and it's a Josh Peck runs to the door and he says, Tony, it's the Al Dente brothers. And they're always flinging. And they're always in classic Nickelodeon fashion. It's always a food. It's always something messy. They're throwing like jelly donuts where they're armed with some sort of ridiculous food that is being bombarded like gunfire into the room. And then there's always a heroic moment where someone dies in front of another person. It's like the most hilarious melodrama you've ever seen, with a mafia melodrama you've ever seen. Like Tony will take a jelly donut, or oh my god!
I want to see Martin Scorsese directed Tony Pajamas biopic.
And the DiCaprio has to play him.
Oh, of course.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry, I'm going off the tangent, but it's so great, so hilarious.
Yeah, like I said, kind of the whole skit of them having to stay in the car.
Mr. Gullible was there too. Like all these ridiculous characters from all the sorts of shows stuck in the car together.
I think there was a lobster as well.
Yes, and of course when they're all looking at who to eat, who do you think they're looking at? And then
of course the show had kind of like that wonderfully bizarre conceit with Penelope Tate being kind of like the Amanda Bynes alter ego.
They never met because they didn't have the budget.
Right. Exactly. Pretty much.
They never had the budget to do a split screen and have them both on.
They did Moody's Point, which was kind of like this hilarious mock of shows like Dawson's Creek. Remember that? That was kind of like later on in the show's run.
Yeah. Remember the dumb thing? I mean, it was intentional. That's why it's dumb. It's the thing that ended on a cliffhanger too.
Yes, of course, and I think that was very obviously it was intentional. Yeah. But Dragon, before I go out, just seriously, Amanda Show. I love the set. I honestly think like all that is definitely the show with a bigger legacy than Amanda Show. But I do feel like Amanda Show is almost kind of like the more clever of the two, just because of how it kind of took the idea of the sketch show. Yeah. And all that definitely had like the bits where they were backstage for sure. But Amanda Show kind of played with that even further, where the backstage bits it was almost kind of like a House of Mouse style setup with the backstage bits. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm with it again. I prefer this one over all that personally. I mean, I remember watching this on Saturday.
I just had to put all that over this just because of the legacy thing, and I think all that is like there's a big reason why not all that's high, but
like my perfect block was like it was Amanda Show and Keenan and Kel for the live action stuff. Like that was my wheelhouse. Like yes, and again, I kind of get both elements from all that in kind of separate shows. It's kind of more for more from there.
And let's kind of end this off with talking about probably one of the more memorable sketches, Block Blister, where this band of immigrants opens a Blockbuster, and they refilm every film in their catalog. And
Tiki, listen, I could be wrong. I just want to might blow your mind with this. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. I'm hearing the voice in my head. I'm pretty sure the father in Block Blister, the recurring actor, that should be John Kazir, who is Raimundo from Rocket Power. And
I can believe that.
I'm pretty sure about Tiki. I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure that's John Kazir, who also was Deadpool in video games.
And Crypt Keeper.
Yes, and Crypt Keeper.
Okay, so yeah, Dragon, just, all
Welcome
the customers...
to Block Blister, how may you help me?
All the customers would walk in like, this isn't this movie, this is this awful imitation of this movie. And of course the catchphrase, no, but this is better. Much better. All right. So Dragon, you're number 4?
Okay, my number 4. I know we got speed. So number 4, Danny Phantom. I've talked about Danny Phantom in excess before. I'm just going to kind of go through the marks here again. This to me is Butch Hartman's finest work. This is like it was a clear-cut story. I'm not sure how far ahead they planned this, if they always had the ending in mind. But the point is that Butch Hartman, he's really delivered. He had more storytelling and narrative with this show. It wasn't just kind of like random kind of like comedy stories, which like from a 10-year-old perspective, like Fairly Odd Parents, which doesn't spell doom or anything, but this show was awesome. It was Ghostbusters meets Spider-Man. That's what this was. It was a blend of Ghostbusters and Spider-Man. It was a really great premise. A superhero who's a teenager like Spider-Man, but he's a ghost. He can turn to a ghost, and his parents are ghost hunters. All these fun ideas, and this was kind of Nickelodeon's attempt at a superhero show, and it was so cool. Mm-hmm. Great voice talent. Of course, you like David Kaufman. Jimmy Olsen from the Superman show played Danny Phantom, which is so funny. You had Rob Paulson, of course, as Jack Fenn, and the Box Ghost, and the bright shiny element of my life here. I put her on a giant pedestal. Grey Delisle's in the show. Oh my God, Grey Delisle's is Sam Manson. Point is, excellent show. I just have so much reverence for it. Again, I think it's the best thing Butch Hartman did. It was a story, and this is feeding into my number 1 pitch. Basically, this is a show where it's getting a little more impressive with the storytelling. Don't ever had its comedy episodes in there. Not every episode's a winner, but it was strong in the storytelling, and it also ended on had a great finale called Phantom Plan, which is a great little ender to the series. I felt like a definite ending, and all their movies were good too. I mean, this one had a few TV movies, and they were all quality stuff, and just an excellent show.
Yeah, we've gone over this with me before, but Danny Phantom was kind of like when I had that period where I thought I had outgrown Nickelodeon for a certain amount of time, so it kind of came right at the cusp of that. So I feel bad that I haven't watched all of Danny Phantom. Really, the only episodes I have watched are the ones we've done for Halloween specials and Christmas specials, but I digress. It seems like a very interesting show. And Dragon, what I really do kind of appreciate about Danny Phantom in retrospect is that it seems like it was the first kind of like Nicktoon, outside of maybe the exception of Avatar, to have like a running storyline through it, or at least kind of like a running continuity behind it. Okay. So what?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So my number 4, Dragon, it's mostly on here out of nostalgia. It's kind of the counterpoint to Double Dare. It's Legends of the Hidden Temple. All right. So like I said, just tons of nostalgia going on here. What can you say about the sets? The sets were so cool. This thing literally was a theme park attraction at Universal Studios. Of course, you just had to be one of the lucky kids, picked to actually participate in it. But I believe it was kind of an attraction where you could go in the Florida Universal Studios and watch it being filmed. There's so much classic things about this show for the 90s kid perspective. There's Olmec, of course. Kirk Fogg is a great host. Of course, you've got the narration by D. Bradley Baker, which is always fun. The temple guards legitimately gave me nightmares, Dragon. Like, I remember kind of fantasizing about being on the show, but at the same time, I'd be like, oh my god, but I would hate to run into a temple guard if I had to do the temple run. So, it just, I don't know, man. It was just such an escapist game show. That's what I really appreciate about it. Like, it was probably filmed like two doors down from where they filmed Double Dare. But the set itself was like very, very vast and all-encompassing, at least from the perspective of how they filmed it on TV. I mean, I'm sure the actual set, if you go to it in person, looks physically smaller than what was shown on TV, of course. But I don't know, just like I said, it's just I have such admiration for the creativity behind this show, for all the set design, for all the mythology they worked into it, just how original the concept was, and there's really never been a game show like it before or since. And I've got to admit, I don't have a ton of enthusiasm about the movie, but I'll check it out and I'll give it a fair shot.
What did you think of the trailer?
I didn't care for it all that much.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll check it out. Like, I'm interested to kind of see. I'm curious about it. What I'd really like is a reboot of the game show, but I digress. So yeah, Legend of the Hidden Temple, like I said, this was easily probably, like, out of everything on Nickelodeon airing back in the day when I was a kid, this was the thing I'd want to watch the most just because it just sparked my imagination. I really love the settings. I think in a weird way, Dragon, the settings on the show kind of inspired my love of Disney park settings in a way. So yeah, definitely a lot of stuff here for me to kind of latch onto. It's not the deepest show in the world. It's not necessarily the most rewatchable show in the world, but it's a classic signature of 90s Nickelodeon. So, okay.
All right, my number 3, Cat Dog.
Cat Dog.
Oh boy, when I think Nickelodeon, I think of this show.
Okay.
That's why it's high on the list, folks. It's just when I think Nickelodeon, I remember watching this show so many times. It's like the ultimate odd couple, dog and cat stuck together. It's like what was proclaimed to be the end of the world, and Ghostbusters ends up being one of the best. Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria, but also mass hilarity is what Bill Murray did not say. It's fun. It's fun, silly. It's got some great world building to it. I love they have all these kind of these eclectic buildings, like all these sorts of ridiculous kind of shops and stuff you go into. Like there's a shop that sells basically it sells surgery for butt implants. It's hilarious. Not even implant. I'm saying basically like they're selling bottoms, or basically you can get your lower half replaced because that you can see where that presents a story opportunity for Cat Dog. Getting your lower half replaced with an actual pair of legs and a butt. It's a lot of fun. Again, this had, to me, more in common with Abbott and Costello looking back at it. I mean, the biggest element for me is being a huge Abbott and Costello fan, especially the Abbott and Costello show, more specifically. This show, Rancid Rabbit, very much felt like Sidney Fields in that I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't get any inspiration from this, because Sidney Fields, in the Abbott and Costello show, Sidney Fields basically this actor they had who basically would go on and says, "Oh, I'll recommend you to my cousin." Their landlord, Sidney Fields, and their cousin's always played by the same actor, but like in like a get up or like a little wig or something. And
I also feel like he was kind of a takeoff of Red Guy to a certain extent.
Exactly, I'm saying all three of those are kind of in the vein of a Sidney Fields character, where it's like the same character, but he was like various little. He's like a different guy, but no, not really. And like Rancid Red was the same thing. He'll be the mayor. He'll be the sometimes he'll be the mayor. Sometimes he'll be like the salesman. Sometimes he'll be the owner of Taco Bell. It's like so many versions of Rancid Rabbit. It's ridiculous. They're really great. There's some great memorable episodes. All You Can Eat, which I mentioned this before. I remember playing the game, the Flash game online, the Flash player. All You Can't Eat game where you're trying to steal the stuff from Taco Depot. Mm-hmm. And I remember my grandfather used to play with me, and always on the computer, because he was the computer savvy. He is the computer savvy guy. And he always, still to this day, he will say "Cat Dog." You're like ahem, because before you lose, Rancid Rabbit spots you.
Nice.
Hey, Cat Dog. And it's always it's really funny. There's a lot of personal attachment to that one. But there were pretty much all I can say with the Cat Dog episodes. Everything except the last season was really good Cat Dog episodes. Really, not a bad one among the bunch. Just the movie, post the movie. That's
kind of a reoccurring trend, yeah.
There's like one season after. I want to say it was one season after the movie. Could have been two, but point is, everything after the movie. Which the movie was a big deal. The movie was they finally found their parents, which oddly enough, kind of what Hey Arnold's doing.
Right.
And again, that was a big deal for Cat Dog. They really should have ended it there. It was a really nice, happy ending. But the other episodes are Brother's Day. I really like Brother's Day, and also Cat Dog centric because I love they're doing Prohibition era with Cat Dog. That's hilarious. And also, interesting thing to bring up Cat Dog. No one ever talks about this, but there's a lot of hate crime in Cat Dog.
Oh God!
Seriously, I mean, researchers purely hate Cat Dog because of the way they look. A lot of hate crime because they're cats and dogs. They always beat them up, and again, no legal ramifications whatsoever. Just constantly a lot of hate, but also a lot of humor.
Yeah, and honestly, Dragon, that's kind of the thing that veered me away. I mean, Cat Dog was definitely a show that I would watch every time it came on. I was a fan of it. I liked it. I think it's a little too mean-spirited for me, which is odd to say because you have the same exact problem with Invader Zim. I don't know. Like, to me, it's just like the show has definitely got... It's very memorable. I think the show is kind of like... Some of the gross-out gags with Cat Dog don't really work for me. I'm sure some of that's in the last season. Like, what about the gag with the frickin' the episode with the teeth?
Oh, that one, the dentist episode. No, that's early on. That to me is fine.
I hate that episode.
Really?
I mean, don't wrong. It gives me fucking nightmares.
It gets a little cringy when they're eating the foil. I'll give you.
I hate everything about that episode.
All right, that's
so that is kind of like granted, you know, it's just kind of like a subjective thing where there's just. I didn't like any of the gross out humor in this show. I did like kind of like the cartooniness of it. The Abbott and Costello quality. Rancid Rabbit was a great villain for sure.
The one I got to mention this. I think one of the definitive Jim Cummings performances for me.
right.
Seriously, whenever I thought of Jim Cummings, when I realized Jim Cummings did other voices, I always thought of was the definitive Jim Cummings performance.
I can see that. Like
whenever I think of Jim Cummings, I think, and pretty much it is his voice. It's a little regal version of Jim Cummings' voice. It's a little more like he thinks he's hot stuff.
Okay. All right. That it?
Yeah, that's just fantastic. Again, when I think Nickelodeon, so when you bring up like, hey, let's do a thing with Nickelodeon or so on and so forth, I just think, okay, Cat Dog's instantly on my mind. Then I got okay, Nickelodeon. Because I'm thinking of the logo too. It's like Cat Dog, then the logo.
Right. Okay, so my next show, this was definitely a show where I was kind of embarrassed to like it as a kid just because it's very definitively kind of like leans on the girl side of the spectrum. But as an adult, I have no shame about it just because good writing is good writing. Good characters are good characters, and this show is chock full of both.
So basically kind of Powerpuff Girls syndrome.
I'm talking about As Told by Ginger, and As Told by Ginger is definitively less cool than Powerpuff Girls. I just want to say that. I just want to make that clear. Powerpuff Girls was cool because of the superhero angle. As Told by Ginger was not a cool show to like. All right? As Told by Ginger was a show that I would like watch in secrecy and not tell my friends that I watched. But having said that, Dragon, I love the crap out of the show. It's very high on my list just because I feel like it's kind of cemented a legacy for itself in how the show handled character development. I think how the show handled character development was, if I'm being quite frank, kind of groundbreaking. The show was really, really down to earth. It's basically one of those shows kind of in the same style where you can almost see it working in a live action context. And I think every character is super memorable for me. I don't necessarily think all the characters hold up that well over time, but I think I love the main dynamic that Ginger has with Courtney, and I think that's kind of like what leads the whole show.
Yeah, remind me, Courtney's the popular one, right?
Courtney's a popular girl, but she's also kind of like the one who's like a lot of her peers think of her as very stuck up and selfish. But
no, she's very, very genuinely interested in Ginger.
Right. And that's what makes her a fascinating character. And then you have Miranda, and of course Miranda, played by Cree Summers, who I think Miranda is like the ultimate Nickelodeon villain, just because she is so diabolical, but she uses her status as kind of like the queen bee of the high school to conduct all their evil doing in a very realistic, very malicious way.
She is very much the Jafar of the Nickelodeon universe.
And Miranda, the absolutely creepy thing about Miranda is how realistic Miranda is, because the one thing she hates about Ginger is that Ginger is taking attention away from Courtney.
And remember, Miranda will turn on Courtney like that. I mean, there have been stories where she goes against Courtney.
So it's definitely the Miranda dynamic that got me hooked in. That power struggle between Miranda, Courtney, and Ginger.
Oh, remember when Miranda went after Darren? Oh my God, she's
Darren is such a lovable character. Darren is one of my personal favorites on the show. Absolutely. I love Lois. I think Lois is easily out of I hate the fact that her name is even the same name as another cartoon mother named Lois, because they're kind of diametric opposites in terms of this. Lois is an awesome mother. She is a kick-ass mother that is kick-ass, take no names, take no prisoners. She will do anything for her kids. I love the dynamic between Carl and Hoodsy. I think Carl as a character holds up a little bit better than Hoodsy does. But regardless, there's so many good qualities to this show. There's so many good characters. There's so many good storylines. The show naturally evolved their characters in a really cool sort of way. Just absolutely fantastic all the way around. I think the show's a little underrated, specifically, like I said, because it leaned way more towards the female demographic side of things when a lot more males were watching Nickelodeon at the time. But I don't know. I still love it, and I have absolutely no shame in it. So as told by Ginger, absolutely, I think people overlook it just for how high quality it really is in the Nickelodeon lineup.
I remember Gretel House hilariously played Carl's enemy. Was it Brandon or?
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, Courtney's little brother. It was Brandon or something. Yeah. Oh my God, he just played him so over the top. Hilarious, 80s snooty. Just hearing Gretel House do that was hilarious.
Okay. So that's all I got.
Number two, biggie, and believe me, it's really hard to put this one over Cat Dog, but I think again it's Rocko's Modern Life.
I know what your number one is. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Anyway, so Rocko's Modern Life, it was a genius show, and we re-explored it recently. Boy, it's with Christmas in July, it still holds up. It's a we have very likable protagonists in this crazy town. Sounds a lot like another show we love, but it's let's not dwell on some Bates Motel. Point is, we got a lot of memorable characters like the Big Heads or like Heifer, Filbert. All these really memorable characters. It gave the kind of a neat insight in animation when we had the whole Wacky Deli episode, which is a fan favorite, by the way, of seeing I love just the meta idea. This is a great meta exploration. This is a Joe Murray in real life. I've joked Joe Murray looks kind of like Joe Manganiello's father in real life. Not he looks like his cinematic father if he ever to be cast. It would probably be Joe Murray. Point is, I love that, in real life, Joe Murray, he had the same dynamic as Ralph Bighead has with his parents. His father, initially they didn't get along with it, but then eventually they kind of patched things up, and the whole process of animation Wacky Deli is very much like the process for Rocko's Modern Life, only taken off the rails and a little more crazy. He wants to sabotage the own show so he can get out of his contract. It's pretty funny. You get a lot of clever gags, like one of the just clever conceits, like Heifer, who's a steer, is adopted by wolves.
Right.
And it's such a sweet dynamic, though. They really do love this guy. Yet the fact is, Tom Kenny also played Dog, but I think Heifer's one of his best performances, though. Aside from the obvious, but still, Heifer was one of his great performances before SpongeBob, pre-SpongeBob. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of great comedy. Like he plays Heifer so wonderfully stupid at times. It's a show that the reason it's number two is it's a show I'm eager to rewatch always. It's like a show whenever I see Rocko's Modern Life, oh my God, I haven't seen Rocko's Modern Life for a long time. I gotta watch it. Because again, it's just I have so many fond memories. It's Rocko. It's this wonderful premise. Like he's kind of a foreigner, kind of coming to the country here, and he's learning about all kind of the crazy stuff going on in O-Town. It's Rocko goes to the beach. Rocko buys a vacuum cleaner. It's like Rocko does all these sorts of things, and it's like the most mundane premise for an episode. Like something you and I have done, constantly. We go someplace, we do something, but it's in this kind of this bizarre animated town where anything can happen.
Right.
It's like a lot of fun memories. I think it kind of embodies what they were going for with the Nickelodeon shows. It's kind of like Doug, but in a more it's like Doug in a more Ren and Stimpy world. That's what it is. You know, it's kind of Doug meets Ren and Stimpy. This is kind of the byproduct. It's Rocco's modern life, and it's a show that many people do love to this day. I am one of those people.
To tell you the truth, one of my biggest memories of the show is the Super Nintendo game Spunky's Dangerous Day, which was the hardest thing in the fucking world. That game was so hard because you had to run around as Rocco and keep Spunky from harm from all these obstacles. But anyways, I won't bore you with the details.
I remember the game show was hilarious, where it was Heifer the Devil, basically the guy like the Grim Reaper / Devils, like a guy in I forget. Oh, his name is Peaches. Oh my God, his name is Peaches. So Peaches, this Grim Reaper like figure, Heifer like sold his soul or something. He's trying to trick Heifer to go into heck. That's what they call it in the show. They call it heck because they can't call it the other thing. And basically, they're playing a game show. It's a very easy game show where Heifer, it's an obvious trap. Heifer does not pick up on this at all. Where he has to literally, it's like the Wheel of Fortune type show. He has to guess the word, that sort of thing. And the word it's like password meets Wheel of Fortune, I guess. I don't know. It's like he has to guess. He's in the password set where he has to guess the word pizza, and he's very obvious description. He keeps like, calzone. No, that's pepperoni. It's so hilarious, and it's anyway, just a lot of fun. Nostalgia memories, Rocco. Moving on.
Okay, so my number 2, this is really on here just for the legacy quality of it all, because I feel like this show started a spark in Nickelodeon that just exploded and gave us a lot of excellent content out of it. I'm talking, of course, about All That. I mean, come on, they named the 90s block after this show. What can you say? You know, it's this show gave birth to so many talented people. Of course, Amanda Bynes, Keenan and Kel being the big obvious ones. You also have people like Danny Tabarelli who went on to do Pete and Pete.
And Jack DeSena.
Of course. You also had Gabriel, Fluffy, and Glacius go through in the reboot of the show in the early 2000s. So really, this show, Dragon, there's no other way around it. It's SNL for kids. In the 90s, I am so glad we had this. I am so glad we 90s kids grew up with this experience. To be able to, on Saturday nights, look forward to a new episode of All That and wonder, like, oh, what guest stars are they going to bring out? What sketches are they going to do? Oh, I hope they do a Good Burger sketch. You know what I mean? It's like just the excitement, the adrenaline. I love how it was kind of like the fixture of the Snick lineup along with Keenan and Kel. Of course, you got to love that classic orange couch setup they had.
I love the orange couch.
I don't know, Dragon. It's like, to me, All That, it's not necessarily the sketches themselves. I kind of think that the individual sketches on the Amanda Show are a little better. It's mostly just the legacy of All That. It's the fact that, of course, so many performers came out of it. It was the fact that All That gave us that experience in the 90s as 90s kids that only 90s kids have, of growing up with our own personal SNL alongside the adult SNL. And I'll never forget it for that. I will never forget All That for that reason. It is such an iconic fixture of the channel that I couldn't put it outside of this. It's like, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of some of the sketches, and I honestly think on a whole the Amanda Show is better, but All That is on here at number 2, specifically for the legacy to Nickelodeon that All That represents.
I remember one of my favorite All That, just one sketch I want to mention. I do love the Super Dude sketches, because I just love the idea of a Superman-like character. His weakness is dairy products. I just think that's hilarious. Anyway, so, moment of truth. Are you ready for it?
I know what your sheet's going to be, too, by the way. I know exactly what your sheet's going to be.
Well, the last horse has finally crossed the finish line. Okay. So, number 1, which is kind of a cheat, folks. It's kind of a twofer, I'll admit. But I think it's in the same universe, so it's kind of...
I'm totally fine with it. Just, honestly, just because I would have hated for you to pick between these two shows, just on your part, that would have been just an agonizing decision. So,
all right. So these shows are Avatar: Last Airbender and Legend of Korra.
Yep. Okay.
Oh boy, we're starting. And let me first say the creators of the show are some of the most brilliant and beautifully beautiful storytellers ever. I can only describe them as these are beautiful men who brought us this wonderful show. I'm so grateful. Brian Konietzko, who I really identify with, by the way, I'm going to tell you why in a second. Brian Konietzko and Michael Date Martino.
Okay.
My God, these guys are just brilliant storytellers, and these two guys, they champion the show. Without these two guys, we have no show. And Brian Konietzko, he's kind of very much like myself in sensibilities. The only difference is he didn't really grow up with Disney animation, which is the only real difference here. But he's a big animated series fan, a Batman animated series fan, which I kind of identify these two shows with a lot. And Mike Dave Martin, he also worked on Family Guy a little bit. And he was the bigger Disney fan. Like Pinocchio was his first movie. A lot of kind of see similarities in there. If you kind of look at, if you really want to analyze it, kind of see some sensibilities from what they like in the show. Mm-hmm. But point is, these two guys, they kind of had a realization. They both loved Miyazaki films. They both loved Princess Mononoke, and they were both simultaneously introduced to it along the way. Of like, oh my God, we have our sensibilities, and they kind of come together over Princess Mononoke and the Miyazaki works. Like, oh my God, anime is amazing. I mean, it's not just like the anime we're familiar with, like the other stuff. It's like kind of classy anime.
Right.
And just from that, that friendship develops, and they kind of pitch some shows, and ends up being, in my opinion, the best show from Nickelodeon. Now, I say not fate. I'm saying it's one of the best quality shows from Nickelodeon, I would argue. Because this essentially is like before we get something like Steven Universe or Gravity Falls on today, is highly regarded as.
We would not have something like Gravity Falls without this. So
that's what I'm saying. I want to say fairly, because this is also reaching back to Avatar: Last Airbender, which is before The Legend of Korra. But
of course,
I would say this was the proto kind of Steven Universe Gravity Falls we have to contend with today.
Totally.
This, again, for me at least, this is like the best thing in animation I had seen in years, which blew my mind. These two shows, on televised animation following the animated series and Justice League.
Because before that, like really all we had was stuff like Dragon Ball Z that had the whole continuous story arcs thing going for it.
Yeah, no, wrong, man. I love my Dragon Ball Z.
I love my Dragon Ball Z too, but I think these shows in particular, like the Western way of doing it, I think is fascinating on a whole other level than anime. Not to like anime and Western animation, of course, two different things. I digress. I don't want to get into that whole can of worms.
One is this kind of a great meeting of the two. That's what
absolutely,
the show is. Kind of a fantastic meeting of the two. And this, I'm going to keep using the word fantastic. Hopefully, I don't sound like Rob Liefeld too much. But it's seriously, there's such fantastic storytelling that treated the audience with respect, and there was fun, but also great thought provoking ideas were raised. We have a character, so many adult ideas within a show that is kind of through like a kid's point of view. And again, a kid who's 112 years old, but still 12-year-old. And it's this fantastic journey in the first season. It's a journey. They always planned on Avatar: Last Airbender in 3 seasons, 3 books, as they call it. It was always a concise story. They knew the beginning, middle, and end. But as they developed the series, you get some really fun, reoccurring characters. They developed things further than they thought they would. And you get basically a really well fleshed out 3 seasons that took twists and turns along the way to be this phenomenal story. And it did. And it did the impossible thing. The reason this is number 1 also is like it did the impossible. It did it twice with a sequel series. Oh my God! It's like you have this amazing series that everyone will highly regard. Like, oh my God, After Last Airbender is some of the best storytelling you'll see in animation. And what they do Legend of Korra, which you think it's not like a direct sequel. 7 years have passed. About right. I believe it's 7. Yeah, 7 years have passed in between, or so. Many years have passed. Katara is an old woman at this point, the main female character.
Right,
she's a really old woman at this point. She's had a family, and you have the children of anger in the show. That's the premise. And basically, what I always equate this to, and I very much it's another reason it's number 1 for me. It very much is like Batman Beyond for After Last Airbender. It's what Legend of Korra is. It is.
Yeah,
they have other really great different characters. I mean, they're vaguely in archetypes we're familiar with, but I mean, still they're very different. Like Korra is a different personality. I've had the pleasure of converse, not in person, but emailing the voice actors for Korra. Very lovely person, Janet Varney, very lovely. She's really kind, really nice. She's really funny too. She does riff tracks live. She's a lot in the comedy festivals, that sort of thing. Really, seriously, great performer. She'll never admit to it, but she's a great performer. That's what
I know the feeling of not being.
She's very self-conscious. Like she'll kind of like dismiss praise, but she deserves it. I guess she's
right.
Good in the show. But it's also, in addition to her, you have like great allows coming back for a few roles here and there, but also you have. Not in your face like Azula. My God, Azula is one of the best Great Allows performances ever. Debatably her best performance, actually. Debatably. It's really good. Point is, with the sequel series, with Legend of Korra, they took kind of the ideas of the first series. They kind of it's in a different context. You go a little darker with Legend of Korra. It's a little more a smidge more adult, but it's in the same vein of creative storytelling. I know I'm droning on. Believe me, I could really talk about these.
Oh, I know you could, and one day I will. I will watch the show, and we will.
And also, I don't want to give away. People need to see Legend of Korra. Nickelodeon, as basically Nickelodeon's. The best thing Nickelodeon ever did was kind of lay the groundwork so a show like this could be told. And with Legend of Korra, though, that's when Nickelodeon kind of at the same time they allowed something fantastic after Last Airbender. They have like they kind of dropped the ball a little bit. Legend of Korra, where they start jerking around the schedule, where things again it's like any network. Over time, they get a little less. They get a little worried about the ideas of time. We don't have the same Vanessa Coffey spirit we had at the beginning here, but it shows you as time goes on, networks change. And they're still supported to do okay in the first place and provide for them. But they kind of can't. They didn't okay like a full 4-season thing like eventually happened to Legend of Korra. Like Avatar was okayed for 3 seasons because they had a concise story to tell. Our guys, they were given, okay, I'll give you a season. We'd like to come back for another one. They already ended at season 1 because they weren't sure. Season 2.
Right.
And then they're, okay, well, instead of being in the mornings, you're going to put you at night. Instead of being at night, we're going to put you online. So it was a hectic schedule for Korra, but still they delivered a really nice product. Controversial ending, but that's up for people to see it to judge for it. I think regardless it's good. So the last thing I can say about the show is summarize my feelings on it absolutely. So when I was watching these shows, specifically Korra, but with the shows in general, both of them, I think they accurately, at least for me personally, they recaptured the feeling I had with Batman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond, which I didn't think was possible. When watching Legend of Korra, I would get up in the mornings, whether it's morning, night, or online. I'd watch these shows and I'd be transported, being so enveloped in the storytelling. I haven't felt that way since I was a 5-year-old kid watching Batman the Animated Series. I was so sucked into the world. It's just some of the finest storytelling that Nick allowed to happen, and Nickelodeon has the privilege of just listing that as like, we have this show. We made this show happen.
Yeah.
Oh my God! So it's one of the This is debatably the best quality of show they've ever produced.
Okay. And debatably, because we're also going to talk about my number one choice.
Yes, yours is definitely debatable. Yours was also my other number one I would have considered had we not.
And Dragon, that's why I absolutely had to jump on and just be an asshole and be like, I call dibs. Because, folks, it shouldn't be any surprise. Dragon and I have droned on and on about how much we love this show. Hey, Arnold, number one with a bullet. Not even a question for me. It wasn't a competition. From the second I called dibs on Hey Arnold, I knew it was going to be number one. Not to dismiss any of the other shows. They're all great in their own way, or else they wouldn't be on the top 10 list. But Hey Arnold is amazing. It's cerebral. It's on a whole other level from other Nicktoons in a way. I feel like Hey Arnold captured the best of both worlds in terms of it was an amazing comedy. There was a lot of really lightning sharp humor in it, but it also had a serious kind of like self-reflective tone to it. It was very down to earth. It was very slice of life. It also had a lot of fantastical elements, but the fantastical elements were woven into it very, very, very subtly, which is one of my favorite elements of the show. In terms of favorite episodes, where to start? Can
I stop you at the favorite episodes for one moment? Can I just piggyback off what you're saying here? I found out the origins of Hey Arnold, which is amazing. And
the origins of Hey Arnold are
the origins of Hey Arnold, not those origins.
You know what I'm thinking.
Okay, no, but this is great. I found out there are two things without you would not have Hey Arnold to this day. One, Charlie Brown, Charlie Brown Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
That was directly Craig Bartlett. That was what he loved. He loved just the premise of, like, again, what we always talk about constantly around Christmas time. Linus and Charlie Brown walk into that wall. That amazed him. He just loved the idea of, like, just two characters talking to each other and say, man, things aren't going that well. Just the idea of, like, people airing out their problems to kids airing out their problems to each other. The other thing that gave us Hey Arnold, and kind of a fun story, is that without Pee Wee Herman, we would not have Hey Arnold. I kid you not, because he loved the stop motion from Pee Wee's Playhouse, and Craig Bartlett got interested in stop motion beforehand, and he actually worked on the Pee Wee Herman show. He did the Penny shorts. His character was like pennies for eyes. And basically, when he's pitching the ideas for Hey Arnold with he and this group of other collaborators, they were kind of hitting the wall with the pitch of like, yeah, this is not going that well. So basically, he says, "You want to see some penny shorts I got?" Just to kill some time, I guess, while they're having like a lunch or something. And when he's reaching for it on the cover, he had another stop motion, a plasticine claymation-esque creation he made earlier on to do some short films with. Arnold from Hey Arnold, he made a clay version of Arnold. And basically, I want to say it was Vanessa Coffey who caught wind of this, or someone, whichever executive it was, looked and said, "Oh, who's this character? Let me see this." And basically, Bartlett also had a comic he did of Arnold. It was published in a magazine, like a Simpsons magazine, called it was basically Arnold Goes on a Roller Coaster. Pretty much, it's Arnold on a roller coaster. He does not emote during the whole thing, and basically, he gets home at night. He walks home like old sad Arnold walk, and basically, he gets in bed and he says, "Yeah!" It's like delayed reaction. She was just so blown away by it, they got the okay to take it to the pilot, and then the rest is history. That was Arnold's beginning. I know it seems a little out of the way to you, but what I'm getting at with your thing about the feel of Arnold is that Bartlett loved the Victorian houses, which is where you get the boarding house from. Basically, imagine what this kid would be in this boarding house, and he figured the key to Arnold is presenting kind of this gritty urban stuff, but through Arnold's perspective, something may seem ugly and urban in the neighborhood might be really beautiful if you just say, "Hey, I'm presenting this to you," and actually it's beautiful if you hang it on a wall.
Mm-hmm.
And you get these great episodes stemming from that, though. Just like something that seems like, in a city, it seems like kind of a nothing story, and be turned into some of these amazing, heartwarming stories, such as the one I know you're going to start with.
Pigeon Man, of course.
Yes!
Pigeon Man is honestly one of the most beautiful pieces of animation I've ever seen in my life. I still think it holds up amazingly well.
Very great ending.
Of course, I love all the urban mythology episodes. I love the haunted train. I love the headless carriage, stuff like that.
Headless Cabby.
Cabby. I'm sorry. Sue me.
I know.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm sorry. You kind of hijacked me when I was about to get into all my favorite episodes, and now I'm a little scatterbrained.
Let me help you out then.
Okay.
Well, tell them about the big cliffhanger that we are finally getting an answer to, Tiki. Tell them the folks about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously the show kind of ended with the Arnold parents mystery never resolved. So
yeah, but the Journal was such a great setup episode. Remember?
Right, it was.
Remember, they were so hyped. They tried to basically they pulled a Gallivant on the series. They wanted to make a cliffhanger so encapsulated, end on like that big Jim Lang note of like like, oh my god, I gotta see the next part. It's gonna be a TV movie and or a theatrical movie of some kind. You're gonna see what happens here. And then nope, Nickelodeon. As much as Nickelodeon gives at times, at least in the past, they take it away. But now they're making it right. They're coming back, and we're gonna see the Jungle movie next Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and just like I said, I mean, I'm sorry, Dre, you did kind of like hijack some of the stuff I was trying to say. So, but I mean, the whole feel of the urban mythology, kind of like taking the whole idea of like taking the few city blocks and making a big adventure out of it. Like the Fuzzy Slippers character, the unseen Fuzzy Slippers character, who's kind of like the curator of said mythology. Just all those elements really wove their way into the show really well. The characters were all very memorable. I keep saying that, but Helga in particular, I think, is probably one of the best characters to ever come out of Nickelodeon because of how complex she was. Seriously, she's like just an excellent case study in psychology. We have that great Helga on the Couch episode. Oh, yeah. Gerald was a really solid best friend for Arnold. Of course, the Gerald and Phoebe relationship was very subtle, but very well handled. Harold was a really good subversion of the bully archetype. I could just go on and on. It's like this show.
Phil.
Yeah, of course.
Oh my God, I love Phil. Just one of the best. That's the best Dan Castellaneta performance. If everyone's gonna say Homer Simpson, I don't forget Homer Simpson. I'm like, Grandpa Phil.
I'm over Homer Simpson, but no, I mean it's such an unbelievably rich show. There's so much detail in it. There's so much good real building in the show. Ironically enough, even though, like we said, it's just kind of few city blocks for the most part. All the characters are really well handled. I feel like it was always kind of like a predecessor to the character development that we get in something like Avatar, where obviously the storyline isn't there and we don't have like the high stakes and the fantastical situations that Avatar had. but these characters evolved and grew. You know what I mean? These characters were not the same characters they were at the end of the series that they were in the beginning of the series. And I think the show kind of broke some ground in that regard. And I think that's why it's really high regarded. And mostly Dragon, I just love the show because it's just, there are so many different episodes, there are so many different characters, there's so many different moments, and there's something for everyone. I'm a horror movie fan, so of course I like stuff like The Haunted Train, but you know, there's also like a lot of episodes revolving around Arnold and Helga. I love the episode where Helga and Harold have to bike back to town from the aquarium when they get.
That is such a great. It's a plane, trains, and automobiles parody. I love it.
Love that episode. So many memorable episodes. So many memorable situations.
Eating contest. That's my favorite.
Oh, we're not going to mention the Iggy episode. We're not going to mention
That's
that.
One of the. I don't know. Like towards the last season, you get a few stingers, but that was the only real stinker that I can really.
Yeah, I think that's the only Hey Arnold episode that's kind of universally not liked. But
yeah. But it's a show. It stands test time. Again, it was kind of someone with Charles Schultz perspective doing their own thing in many ways. It's kind of the
sure.
I mean, that's how he described himself. That's what I've heard. Like he's a big Charles Schultz fan. That's really what it kind of came from the same school of thought on that. And it's kind of Peanuts for the from the '90s generation that's stuck around almost as long as the Peanuts in feeling, not in actuality. Not the same.
By the way, Snoopy's 45th birthday was yesterday.
Really? And you didn't tell me?
No.
Well, thanks for that.
I probably should have, but we already kind of had plans in place, so.
Well, still, I could have just liked to know that.
All right, fair enough.
Anyway, so by the way, last fun fact about Harold, I found this out today. I thought it was really clever. I'm just showing you how great the storytelling is in Harold. It comes from these little places. Helga actually hijacked the show because she was a much smaller character.
Yeah.
I love the idea that her purpose initially was because in selling Arnold as a protagonist, as a character, the network executives, I guess, were asking, like, what's so special about Arnold? Says, well, here's what we're going to do. We have this character who's in love with Arnold. She basically would exposit how great Arnold is in all these little soliloquies and monologues, so we don't have to really show it. Which it worked. Yeah.
Okay, so Dragon, do you have any kind of last soliloquies about Nickelodeon turning 25 to end us out on?
Well, Nickelodeon, my God, it changed the face of animation, especially animation on television. Tiki just blows my mind. I still would love to see like just a documentary of any kind that just would really dedicate some time to showing what Vanessa Coffey and Jerry Laybourne, just the people involved, just the heads of Nickelodeon. When this transitional phase, was like we're going to seek out these creative people, these creator-driven series, and we're just going to. I love this creative atmosphere too. And doing the research for this thing today, just to, refresh yourself and find out some things we didn't know, which I'm so amazed by. I just love the idea of all these creative things that went into place to bring about these iconic, just generation-defining stories and shows and things we love so truly. And it's like they started back in 91, around, well, a little bit before 91 to make the shows happen. You made all of this possible. They just we're going to seek out some creative talent. It's such an optimistic, such an idealistic goal. Like, let's just put some good shows on television. And they did that. They saw the creative people say, okay, what do you show? Give me what you got. It's like it's such an innocent creative idea of like, let's just, oh, you got a good idea? Let's run with it. It was like so open to ideas back in the day. Now it's a little hard to get your foot in the door with ideas, but it was able to happen back then, and it shows the stay power that we loved it so much. They're going to actually acknowledge, oh yeah, hey, listen, this TV animation studio's been around for 25 years, and why do we care? Because the shows were so great.
Yeah,
and they stuck with people.
Okay.
It's just Nickelodeon animation. Fantastic. There's not, again, we mentioned the animation, but also Nickelodeon series in general. The live action shows as well. But I'm saying the animation was the actual anniversary of. We also want to mention kind of the quality of the live action shows, which again, without the live action shows getting any attention, we would not have kind of the animation being welcomed at all. So it all fits into the Nickelodeon picture there.
All right, folks. So thanks for watching, and let's just hope that Nickelodeon produces more things like Hey Arnold and less things like Breadwinners in the future, because my God, Breadwinners is fucking terrible. All right, have a good night, folks.